The first thing he feels is the taste of dirt in his mouth. Not hospital dirt, real dirt, damp, with a hint of clay and something rotten. The second thing he feels is the cold. A cold you don't feel in an operating room. The third is a voice. Rough, drunk, dead. No, the voice isn't dead. The voice belongs to someone nearby. The dead one is someone else. The dead one is the man on the floor in the corner. His face is blue, his mouth is open, a pool of vomit under his cheek. He choked. Ethan had seen this hundreds of times on call. Aspiration of vomit, a classic case of alcohol-related death. Except Ethan isn't on call. Ethan doesn't even understand where he is. He raises his hands and sees his fingers. Small, thin, dirty. A black streak of dirt under his fingernails. These aren't his hands. His hands used to be different. A surgeon's long fingers, hone in on thousands of stitches. These hands belong to a child. He touches his face. His cheekbones are sharp from hunger. His skin is rough. In his mouth, he finds 3 loose teeth with his tongue and one that's already rotting. His heart is beating fast. He counts. 120 beats per minute. Tachycardia. Hypoglycemia. The body hasn't eaten for at least a day. A man in a dirty shirt stands in the doorway, yelling something about a grave. "Boy, get up! Your father's dead." "Now you dig." Ethan looks at the dead body in the corner and realizes. It's a father. Not his father. The father of this body. This small body he finds himself in. And then a sound comes from the other corner. Quiet. Hoarse. A wheezing breath as she inhales. Strider. Ethan turns his head. In the corner, lying on some rags, is a little girl. She's about 4 years old, maybe 3.5. Her face is red. Her eyes are closed. Her respiratory rate is 40 breaths per minute. That's a lot. That's a lot for a child. Ethan gets to his feet. His knees are shaking. His head is spinning. He takes 3 steps toward the girl and places his palm on her forehead. It's burning hot. 40 degrees. Maybe more. He opens her mouth with 2 fingers. Her tonsils are swollen. A white coating. Purulent. He leans in closer and looks. Streptococcal pharyngitis. 87% certain. Without antibiotics, a child with this fever and this coating will last 2 days. Maybe 3 if she's lucky. She won't be so lucky, because there are no antibiotics here. The man at the door keeps yelling. Ethan isn't listening. He scans the room. Clay walls, dirt floor, a hearth in the center, a soot-stained ceiling, a single window without glass, plugged with a rag. On the wall are bundles of dried herbs. On the shelf, a wooden bowl and a cracked mug. That's it. That's the entire arsenal. He would have laughed if it weren't for the girl wheezing just a few steps away from him. A blue frame flashes before his eyes. He blinks. The frame doesn't disappear. The text on it is white and clear. The doctor's system has been activated. Condition: lives saved generate trust points. Not lives cured, but lives saved. Those who would have died without you. Ethan reads it. Then he reads it again. Then he closes his eyes and counts to 5. He opens them. The frame is still there. All right, hallucination or not, the girl is dying right now. He turns to the man in the doorway. "Where's the water?" The man falls silent. He looks at Kay as if he's crazy. Ethan repeats himself. "Water. Where?" "The well." The man shakes his head toward the street. Ethan grabs the cracked mug and goes outside. The light hits his eyes. A village, a dirty road. The houses are crooked, half of them are boarded up. A stench hangs over it all. Ethan inhales sharply and freezes. He knows that smell. In his junior year, Professor Pak showed slides with photographs from Bangladesh. Water contaminated with fecal matter. Cholera, or something very close to it. That's what a mass outbreak of an intestinal disease smells like. Ethan stands barefoot on the cold ground, in the body of an 8-year-old child with 3 rotten teeth, and looks at the dying village. He wants to sit down and close his eyes. Instead, he walks over to the well. The water is murky. It's undrinkable. He needs to boil it. He returns to the house. He builds a fire in the hearth. His hands are small and weak, but his body's muscle memory knows how to strike a spark. 10 minutes later, the fire is burning. He finds a clay pot. He pours water into it. He sets it over the fire. The man is gone. The dead body in the corner hasn't gone anywhere. The girl is wheezing. Ethan sits down next to her and checks her pulse. 135. Not good, he thinks. No penicillin. No amoxicillin. There's absolutely nothing he's used to having on hand. There's boiled water in 10 minutes. There's salt, if there's any in this house. There's ash from the hearth, alkaline, a substitute for baking soda. And he needs honey. Honey is a natural antiseptic, hydrogen peroxide in microdoses. Its antibacterial properties were described as far back as Egyptian papyri. Ethan gets up and searches the house. The salt is in a cloth bag behind a pot. A pinch. No honey. He goes outside. A beekeeper lives 3 houses down. He knows that. It's not him. The body knows. Fragments of Kai's memory seep through. The beekeeper is Uncle Felt. Greedy. He won't give any. Ethan stands in front of Felt's house and thinks. Then he goes around to the back. The beehives are by the fence, 3 of them. Nearby, on a shelf, is a clay pot with a crack and a dark stain inside. Scrapings. The leftover honey the beekeeper didn't bother to collect. Ethan takes the pot and leaves. It's theft. He knows that. The girl is dying. He knows that too. Back home, the water is already boiling. He takes the pot off the stove. He waits for it to cool to a tolerable temperature. He grabs a clean rag. No, there are no clean rags. He takes the least dirty rag and boils it. Then he wrings it out. Then he mixes the solution. A pinch of salt, a pinch of ash, a spoonful of honey, a mug of boiled water, oral rehydration salts, the WHO formula for developing countries. He learned it in his sophomore year and never thought he'd have to use it in a world without electricity. He lifts the girl's head. She doesn't wake up. Her lips are dry, chapped. He drips the solution drop by drop onto her lower lip. The swallowing reflex kicks in. Good. 1 drop. 2. 3. A mouthful every 15 minutes. Between doses, he wipes her down with a wet rag. Forehead, neck, armpits, groin. The areas where heat is lost most easily. Then he takes some honey. He dilutes it in warm water. He dips a rolled-up rag into the solution and gently wipes the inside of her throat. The girl chokes. She coughs, but the coating comes off. An hour later, he repeats the process. 2 hours later, once more. The dead body in the corner starts to smell. Ethan covers it with a rag. Then he moves the girl closer to the fire. Then he boils water again. Then makes the solution again. The night drags on. He doesn't sleep. His body craves sleep. He's 8 years old. He hasn't eaten in a day. His hands are shaking. But he doesn't sleep. At 4 o'clock, the temperature drops to 39. At 6, to 38.2. By dawn, it's down to 37.5. The girl opens her eyes. Dark, large, clouded by fever but alive. She looks at him and says 1 word. Kai. And then 2 more. You're warm. The blue frame flashes again. Plus 30 trust points. Lynn's reputation is up by 8. Daily quest completed. Unlocked. Boiling. Not witchcraft. Step 1. Ethan looks at the frame, then at his sister, then at the dead man under the rag, then out the window, where a gray dawn creeps across the dirty village street, a village where 40 households have died out over the winter. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know why he's here. But the girl is alive. Her name is Lena. And as long as she's alive, he'll be alive too. There's a knock at the door, rough, with a foot. The voice from behind the door is hoarse and angry. Kai, you owe me 3 copper coins for my father. I've come to collect them. Ethan stands up. His knees creak. He's 8 years old and weighs as much as a sack of bones, but he opens the door. A man stands on the threshold, about 50 years old, broad-shouldered. His shirt is greasy, a leather belt with a brass buckle, the village headman. Ethan looks at him. His diagnostic gaze kicks in automatically. Pulse, 88. Blood pressure elevated. Complexion gray. And on his neck, on the left, under his jaw, a lymph node. Enlarged. The size of a walnut. Firm. Immobile. Appears painless. Lymphoma, or metastasis. 73% probability. Prognosis without treatment, 1 year, maybe a year and a half. The village elder looks down at Kay and says he's come to collect a debt. That Bourne owes 3 copper coins. That the boy will go to work off his debt for the miller, Grod. Right now. Get ready. Ethan stands in the doorway and looks at this man. At his neck. At his tumor. At the year he has left to live. And he says, "You have a tumor on your neck, village head. On the left side. You need to see a doctor. You have a year, maybe a year and a half." The village head freezes. The hand he was using to hold onto the doorframe slips away. His face turns pale. A neighbor gasps from across the fence. A boy from the house across the street hides around the corner. Silence. Then the village head takes a step back, then another. He touches his neck, feels around. His eyes grow wide. He turns and walks away, without saying a word. Village reputation, +5. Village head's reputation, -30. Trust points, +15. Diagnostic gaze confirmed by witnesses. Ethan closes the door. He sits down on the floor next to Lena. The girl is asleep. Her breathing is steady. 37 and 5. Steady. He places his palm on her forehead and closes his eyes. Behind the door, the village of Manhwa is waking up. The poorest village on the eastern border of the kingdom of Villain. In 47 days, Father Dorian, the Inquisitor healer, will arrive here. He will collect the tithe. 1 child from every 10 households for education, in reality, to serve as servants at the monastery. Half won't survive the first year. And he'll be inspecting the village for heresy. Boiling water is heresy. Washing one's hands is heresy. Knowing that disease lives in dirty water and not in God's punishment is heresy, which warrants a bonfire. 47 days. Ethan counts. Then he counts again. Then he opens his eyes and looks at the blue frame hanging in the air before him. The knowledge store. Available balance, 45 trust points. Cost of a penicillin prescription, 1,500. The cost of surgical anesthesia equipment, 400. The cost of a basic set of sterile procedures, 200. He needs to save many more people before he can truly save them. And in 47 days, a man will arrive who will burn him at the stake for washing his hands. The dead body needs to be removed. Bourne has been lying in the corner for 2 days now, and the smell is getting so bad that Lena is coughing in her sleep. Ethan goes outside. Morning. Gray. Cold. The village goes about its business, or what's left of it. Of the 120 yards, nearly 40 are boarded up. People walk past without looking at one another. Everyone fears that a neighbor will notice a sign of weakness and stop sharing water. Ethan walks toward the house on the edge of the village. That's where Bert lives, the man who digs graves. Not by choice. It's just that he's the only one who still has the strength to lift a shovel. Bert is sitting outside his house, chewing on a piece of bread crust. He looks at Kai and understands everything without words. Bourne. Ethan nods. Bert stands up. He grabs a shovel. They walk toward Kai's home together. Bert hoists the body onto his shoulder like a sack. He doesn't flinch. It's a habit. Over the course of this winter, he's carried more corpses than Ethan saw in 2 years of residency. They carry the body out of the village. There's a pit there, a communal one. It already holds those who weren't given a separate burial. Bert drops the body into it. Ethan stands and watches. He feels nothing for this man. Bourne isn't his father. He's Kay's father. A drunk. He beat his wife when he was alive. He drank away everything there was to drink. He died choking on his own vomit. Ethan turns around and walks back. Bert calls out to him. "Boy, you told the village head yesterday that he had a tumor." Ethan stops. Bert speaks quietly. "You really can see that kind of thing." Ethan looks at Bert. A diagnostic gaze. Pulse 72. Normal. Skin is pale but not jaundiced. Thin but not emaciated. Right shoulder lower than the left. An old injury. About 10 years ago. A malunited clavicle fracture. Ethan says, "My shoulder hurts in the mornings. The right one. Especially when it's cold." Bert freezes. Then he nods slowly. "Yeah, it hurts. It's been 10 years. "How do you know?" Ethan doesn't answer. He goes home. At home, Lena stares at the rags and looks at the empty corner where Bourne used to lie. She doesn't ask where he went. She's 4 years old, but she grew up in a house where people had disappeared before. Her mother, now her father. She's used to empty corners. Ethan sits down next to her. His temperature is 37.2. He's feeling better. His throat is still red, but the swelling is going down. She needs to eat. There's no food in the house. None at all. He searches every corner. An empty grain sack. A dried-up crust of something at the bottom of a pot. A shelf with dried herbs he can't identify. That's it. He's 8 years old. He has no money, no food, no survival skills in a medieval village. He has 21st century knowledge and a body that weighs as much as a large cat. He goes outside again. The village. What's even here? He walks along the main road and counts. One well. The water is murky. A blacksmith shop at the southern end. Smoke is rising. It's open for business. A mill on the eastern edge. Grodd, the very same man Bourne owes money to, the one who wants to take Kay into servitude. An inn. Closed. The owner died in January. The church chapel. Small. Wooden. The symbol of light on the door. A golden circle with rays. Ethan walks past. Pern's merchant stall. Open. Ethan peeks inside. Pern is a thin man with shifty eyes. He's selling what's left. Grain, salt, ropes, rags. The prices are written in chalk on a board. A sack of grain costs 12 copper coins. Ethan has 0 copper coins. He stands in front of the stall and thinks. The system offers a daily quest. A blue frame flashes. Teach one person to wash their hands before eating. Reward. 10 trust points. A shard of fate. Ethan looks at the quest, then at the village. Who should he teach to wash their hands if they don't have any food? All right, food first. He returns to the well. 2 women are standing nearby with buckets. One is young, about 20, holding a child in her arms. The other is older, about 40, and thin. She's coughing. Ethan approaches. He gives the child a diagnostic look. Dehydration, mild. Diarrhea for the past 2 days. Classic symptoms of contaminated water. Ethan says to the young woman, "Your child is sick from the water. Don't drink raw water from the well. Boil it." The woman looks at him. An 8-year-old boy is telling her to boil the water. She glances at the older woman. The older woman snorts. "Kai, you take after your father. He used to talk nonsense when he got drunk, too." Ethan doesn't react. He says, "A pinch of salt, a pinch of ash, a spoonful of honey, a mug of boiled water. Give it to the child every hour. In 2 days, the diarrhea will stop." The woman is silent. Then she takes the bucket and leaves. Ethan stands by the well. No one listens to him. He's 8 years old. He's the son of a drunk. His words are worth less than the mud under their feet. He walks back. On the way, he notices a boy, about 10 years old, sitting on a fence, chewing on a blade of grass. Thin, quick eyes. A name surfaces from Kai's memory. Toby, the carpenter's son. The carpenter died in February. Toby lives alone. Ethan stops. Toby looks at him. "I heard what you told the village elder." Ethan says nothing. Toby continues. "Everyone heard. They say you're cursed, or a witch, or just a fool like your father." Ethan asks, "What do you think?" Toby chews on the grass. "I think you're hungry. Want some turnip?" Ethan takes the turnip. It's tough and a little bitter, the tastiest food he's ever had. He breaks it in half. He takes half to Lena. At home, he feeds his sister small pieces. Lena eats slowly. She chews for a long time. Every bite is like work. Between bites, Ethan gives her the solution: salt, ash, honey, and water every hour. By noon, Lena sits up on her own without help. Ethan takes stock. He has 45 trust points. That's not enough for anything serious. The ORS recipe, which he already knows by heart, costs 80. A basic set of sterile procedures costs 200. He needs to treat people. Every person saved is worth points. Every point is knowledge. Every piece of knowledge is a tool. But to treat people, they have to let him in. And for them to let him in, they have to trust him. And for them to trust him, it takes time. He has 46 days. He closes his eyes and makes a plan. First, food. Without food, he can't function. Second, water. The well is contaminated. As long as people drink untreated water, the village will be sick and dying. Third, allies. He needs at least one adult who will listen to him. Fourth, tools. Needles, knives, containers. Fifth, medicine, honey, alcohol, mold. He opens his eyes. Lena is looking at him. She holds out a turnip stub she'd hidden behind her back. For you. Ethan takes it, chews, swallows, gets up, walks toward the smithy. The smithy stands at the southern end of the village, large, sturdy. The only building that looks as if people actually live in it rather than merely eke out an existence. The heat from the forge can be felt 10 paces away. Ethan goes inside. A man is working inside, big, arms like logs. He wears a leather apron. His face is red from the heat. The blacksmith is Morn. Next to him is a girl, about 15 years old, broad-shouldered for her age. She holds the hammer in one hand the way others hold a spoon. Her hair is tied back with a rag, soot on her cheek. She turns around first, looks at Kay. "What's up, kid?" Ethan looks at the blacksmith. A diagnostic gaze. Pulse 96. Elevated. Temperature 37.8. Slight fever. Right side. He touches his right side discreetly. A habitual movement. Reflexive. Defense mechanism. Abscess. Probability 68%. Not critical yet. But it will be. In a week or two. Ethan takes note. Not now. Right now, something else is on his mind. He looks at the girl. It's Hannah, the blacksmith's daughter. He says, "I need help." Hannah bursts out laughing. "You need food, kid, not help." Ethan says, "I need needles. Thin ones, sharp ones, made of good steel. 12 of them. And I also need a knife, a small one. A blade no wider than a pinky." Hannah stops laughing. "What do you need needles for?" Ethan replies, "I'm going to sew people up." Silence. The blacksmith, Morn, stops striking with his hammer. He turns around. He looks at the 8-year-old boy standing in the doorway of his smithy, saying he's going to sew people up. The boy says, "Go home." Ethan doesn't leave. He says, "You have a fever. Your right side hurts. When you roll onto your right side at night, you wake up." The blacksmith is silent. Hannah is silent. Ethan continues, "It's an abscess, inside. In a week, it'll get worse. In 2 weeks, you'll have a fever so bad you won't be able to get out of bed. In 3 weeks, your daughter will be left alone." Silence. The blacksmith stares at Kay for a long time. Then he says, "How do you know about my side?" Ethan doesn't answer that question. He says something else. "I can help. When things get bad, come to me. I don't need needles yet, but when I do, I'll come." And he leaves. Silence follows him. Hannah watches him go. She isn't laughing. That evening, Ethan sits by the hearth. Lena is asleep. Her temperature is exactly 37, almost normal. He stares into the fire and thinks about the well. The water is contaminated. It's the source of most of the illnesses in the village: diarrhea, dysentery, cholera. Intestinal infections kill more reliably than hunger, because hunger kills slowly, but diarrhea kills in 3 days. Tomorrow, he'll start with the water. Tomorrow, he'll explain to at least one person why it needs to be boiled. Tomorrow. He closes his eyes. His body sinks into sleep instantly. He is 8 years old and hasn't slept for 30 hours. At night, he dreams of an operating room. White light, sterile gloves, the smell of chlorhexidine, and the nurse's voice. Dr. Khan, hang in there. Please hang in there. He wakes up from the cold. Dawn, day 2. On the 3rd day, Ethan starts working with water. He gets up before dawn. Lena is still asleep. His temperature is 36.9, normal. His throat is healing. The honey is doing its job. Ethan goes out to the well. He fills a bucket. He carries it home. His arms are weak. The bucket is heavy. He drags it with both hands and stops every 10 steps. At home, he puts it on the stove. He brings it to a boil. He waits. He pours it into a clean pot. He goes for a second bucket, and a third. By noon, he has 4 pots of boiled water. Now the question is, how to get the village to do the same? He can't order them to. He's a child. He can't explain it. They won't understand words like bacteria and infection. He can only show them the result, the difference, before and after. Ethan walks toward the house of the young woman with the child, the one from the well. Her name is Nora. Her husband left to find work in the city and never returned. She's alone with her 1-year-old son. Ethan knocks. Nora opens the door. She looks at him wearily. The child in her arms is crying. It's been 3 days of diarrhea. Ethan says, I brought water, boiled water. Give him the solution. Salt, ash, honey. I'll show you. Nora is silent. Then she steps back from the door. Ethan enters. The house is small, cleaner than Kay's. At least Nora sweeps the floor. Ethan takes a mug. He prepares the solution right in front of her. He explains each step. The water must be boiled because raw water harbors disease. Salt so the body doesn't dry out. Ash instead of medicine, which isn't available. Honey to make it sweet and so the throat doesn't hurt. Nora listens in silence. The child is crying. Ethan takes a spoon and carefully pours the solution into the child's mouth, little by little. The baby chokes, then swallows, then a little more. 20 minutes later, the baby stops crying, falls asleep. Nora looks at Kai. How do you know that? Ethan tells the first lie that will become his standard answer for the coming months. I dreamed of an old man. He showed me. Nora accepts this. In a world where the light sends diseases as punishment for sins, a dream about an old man is a normal explanation. More logical than the truth. Ethan leaves. That evening, Nora Ra comes to his house. She brings a bowl of porridge. She says, My Aaron hasn't thrown up all day. It's the first time in 4 days. Ethan takes the porridge, shares it with Lena, eats, plus 10 trust points. Daily quest completed. Teach one person to wash their hands before eating. No, he didn't teach her to wash her hands. He taught her to boil water. But the system counted it as a success. Total balance, 55. The next day, Ethan goes to the next house, then to the next one. Every day he boils water and delivers it to homes where there are sick children. Each time, he shows them the recipe for the solution. Each time, he talks about the dream and the old man. By the end of the first week, 7 households are boiling water. The diarrhea stops in 4 children. 2 adults are also recovering. The village takes notice. Not right away, not everyone, but they do notice. Kaya's neighbor, old Mirta, who lives right next door and hears everything, comes over in the evening. Boy, what are you doing? Ethan says, I'm treating people. Mirta looks at him. Her eyes are watering. Not from tears, from an infection. Conjunctivitis. Ethan tells her to rinse her eyes with boiled water and salt 3 times a day. Mirta shakes her head. The healers say illness is a punishment. If the light sent it, then she must have deserved it. Ethan replies, The light doesn't punish people with pus-filled eyes. Myrta leaves. 3 days later, she comes back. Her eyes are clear. She brings an egg. 1. For Lena. Ethan takes it. Village reputation, +3. A small thing, but small things add up. The problem arrives on the 5th day. Grodd. Grodd the miller comes to Kay's house in the morning. He's not alone. He's accompanied by 2 workers, burly men. Grodd is short, broad-shouldered. His hands are flour-stained. His face is puffy. His eyes are small. He stands in front of Kay's house and speaks loudly so the whole street can hear. Bourne owes me 3 copper coins. The boy will have to work it off, or I'll take the girl. Ethan is standing in the doorway. Lena is behind him. She's clinging to his shirt. Ethan looks at Grodd, a diagnostic gaze. Pulse, 102. Elevated. Temperature, 37.6. Chronic low-grade fever. Lungs, right lung. Upper lobe, opacity. A cough that Grodd doesn't notice. Or perhaps he notices but ignores it. Tuberculosis, probability, 71%. Stage 2, contagious. Everyone who works at his mill breathes in his bacteria every day. Ethan takes a step forward. Grodd, you're sick. Grodd blinks. What? Ethan speaks louder, loud enough for the neighbors, who have already poured out onto the street, to hear. Grodd, you cough in the mornings. There's blood in your phlegm. You sweat so much at night that your shirt is wet. You're losing weight. It's a lung disease. It's contagious. Everyone who works near you will get sick. Silence on the street. Grodd turns red. Then he turns pale. Then he does what Ethan expected. He strikes. His fist hits Caillou in the cheekbone. The boy flies to the ground. Lena screams. His head is ringing. There's blood in his mouth. The loose tooth has been knocked out. Ethan lies on the ground, looking up at Grodd. Grodd stands over him, breathing heavily. And then it happens. Grodd coughs. A dry, heavy cough. He turns away. He spits. A dark stain remains on the ground. Blood. Everyone sees it. The neighbors, Grodd's workers, Toby on the fence, Nora in the doorway, Myrta by the window. Everyone sees the blood stain and remembers what the boy just said. Blood in his phlegm. The silence changes. Not frightened. Aware. Grodd looks at the spot, then at Kai, then at the people around him. He turns and walks away. The workers follow him. One looks back at Kai, and in his eyes there's something resembling fear. Ethan stands up. He wipes the blood from his lip. Lena runs to him. She grabs his hand. She's shaking. Ethan lifts her into his arms. She's light. Too light. He carries her into the house and sits down on the floor. His head hurts. His cheek is swelling. But inside there's cold calculation. Grodd won't be able to come back now. Not after the whole street saw what happened. His blood on the ground. His illness out in the open. If he lays a hand on Kay again, people will start saying the miller is contagious and dangerous. And for a miller, rumors are worse than a beating. He needs customers. He needs people to bring grain to his mill. Plus 50 trust points. First victory over the enemy. Unlocked. Isolation of an infectious patient. Village reputation plus 12. In the evening, Toby comes by. He brings 2 apples. He says, "You're crazy, Kai, but you're the right kind of crazy." Ethan takes the apples. He gives one to Lena. He eats the second one himself. At night, he lies there and counts. Total trust points, 115. 85 left until the basic set of sterile procedures. 300 left until surgical anesthesia. 1,400 left until penicillin. 42 days until Dorian. He rolls onto his side. His cheekbone throbs with pain. Lena snores beside him. Her small, warm hand rests on his shoulder. In her sleep, she clutches his shirt and won't let go. Ethan closes his eyes. Tomorrow he'll go into the forest. He needs herbs. He needs mold. He needs a girl who knows 200 local plants and doesn't look people in the eye. The forest begins on the eastern edge of Moonhall. It's dense, dark even during the day. The trees stand so close together that the sky is visible only in patches. Ethan walks along a path that Kai's body knows. His legs find the way on their own, muscle memory. Kai used to come here with his mother when he was 5. She gathered roots for decoctions. Then she died giving birth to Lena. No one else went into the forest after that. Ethan is looking for 2 things. The first is willow bark, salicylic acid, a natural precursor to aspirin, an antipyretic, an anti-inflammatory, a pain reliever. Not very strong, but better than nothing. The second is mold, any kind, on bread, on bark, on damp wood. Penicillin is still a long way off, 1,500 points, but he needs to know where mold grows and start collecting samples right now. He finds a willow tree half an hour later, old, thick. The bark is gray-green. He peels off pieces with his hands. His fingers are small and weak. The bark is tough. 20 minutes later, he has a handful of thin strips and the skin on his palms is scraped raw. At home, he'll pour boiling water over the bark. Let it steep. He'll get a weak but effective fever-reducing decoction. On the way back, he hears a voice. Quiet. A mumble. He steps off the trail. Behind the bushes in a clearing, a girl is sitting. About 16 or 17 years old. Thin, dark hair, long, dirty. Her clothes are gray and patched. She's crouching in front of a stump on which bundles of herbs are spread out. Next to her is a bag made of coarse fabric. And a notebook. A strange notebook, not from around here. The pages are yellowed with age. The cover is made of thin leather. The girl runs her finger across the page and mutters. Ethan steps closer. A twig cracks. The girl jumps up. She presses the notebook to her chest. Her eyes are huge, frightened. She doesn't look at him. She looks away, at his shoulder, at the tree behind him. Anywhere but into his eyes. Ethan stops. He raises his hands. Open palms. A sign of peace. I'm Kai, from Moonhall. Silence. The girl says nothing. Her fingers grip the notebook so tightly that her knuckles turn white. Ethan takes a step back, not any closer. He sees the herbs on the stump. He counts them. Plantain, chamomile, something that looks like yarrow, valerian root. She knows herbs. She knows the forest. She's the daughter of a herbalist, a fragment of Kai's memory. There was a herbalist in the neighboring village. They burned her 3 years ago. The healers of the light. Non-canonical herbs. Her daughter disappeared. Ethan looks at the girl and realizes who's standing before him. You're Siona. The girl flinches. So are you. Ethan says, I heard about your mother. I'm sorry. Siona is silent. Her lips are pressed together. Her eyes are dry. This isn't the kind of pain that makes you cry. It's the kind that is turned to stone. Ethan says, I need help with the herbs. I know what to do, but I don't know what grows here. Siona remains silent for another 10 seconds. Then she says, stuttering, You, that boy, who told the village elder about the neck. Ethan nods. Siona looks at him, for the first time, into his eyes. Quickly, for half a second. Then she looks away. Then she says, Willow bark. You gathered it. What for? Ethan replies, A fever-reducing decoction for the sick children in Manhwa. Siona is silent. Then she crouches down again, opens her notebook, flips through the pages, finds a page, shows it to him. Ethan leans in and freezes. There's a drawing on the page. A willow branch. Labels next to it. Dosage. Boiling time. Contraindications. It's all written in neat, small handwriting. But that's not what makes Ethan freeze. At the bottom of the page is different handwriting. Larger. Sloppier. And in another language. Ethan reads. He reads it again. Then he sits down on the ground because his legs can no longer support him. It's Cyrillic. It's Russian. He doesn't read Russian fluently. He's Korean. But as a sophomore, he'd read old Soviet field surgery manuals. He knows the letters. He can make out the words. and he recognizes the word written at the bottom of the page instantly. Antibiotic. Written in Cyrillic, in a notebook that's at least 20 years old. In a world with no electricity, no running water, and no concept of bacteria. Someone was here before him, someone who knew Russian, someone who knew medicine, someone who wrote the word antibiotic in the notebook of the herbalist who was burned 3 years ago. Ethan looks up at Siona. This notebook, whose is it? Siona clutches it to her chest. Mom's. Ethan speaks slowly. Who taught your mom? Siona is silent for a long time. Then she says, She said, there was a man a long time ago. He knew everything about diseases, about wounds, about what's inside people. They burned him, just like they burned her. The hidden card is partially revealed. Trust points, +20. Siona, +12. Quest unlocked. Find Volkov's manuscript. Ethan sits on the ground in the forest next to the girl who holds her dead mother's notebook. And he realizes he isn't the first. Someone has already tried. Someone has already come into this world with knowledge. Someone had already healed, taught, saved, and they burned him. Fear creeps in quietly. Not panic. He isn't panicking. But realization, pure and cold. They'll burn him too. If he keeps doing what he's doing, if he continues to heal people with what the church calls heresy, if Inquisitor Dorian finds even a single clue, they'll burn him. He's 8 years old. Lena will be left alone. Ethan sits and weighs his options. Then he stands up. He says to Siona, "Show me what else is in this notebook." Siona looks at him. For the first time, she doesn't look away. She says, "Mom said it, before she died, under the hearth, about the one who will come after us." Ethan freezes. "What?" Siona repeats. "Mom said it, under the hearth at home in Moonhall. Something is buried there, for the one who will come after us." Ethan holds his breath for 3 seconds. Under the hearth, at home, his home. Kai's home. Under the hearth where he boiled water for Lena. Something is buried there, 80 years, waiting for him, or someone like him. He wants to run home right now, dig up the hearth, find it. But he stops himself. No, not now. In the daytime, when the neighbors can see. When anyone might look in the window. No. At night, when Lena falls asleep, when the village falls silent. Then. Ethan says, "Siona, I need help. Not just with herbs. I need someone who knows plants, who can grow them, gather them, prepare decoctions. You'll come to Moonhall." Siona takes a step back. She's afraid of villages. She's lived alone in the forest ever since her mother was burned. 3 years, alone. Ethan understands. He says, "Not to the village, to me, to my house. I won't let anyone hurt you." The words sound funny coming from the mouth of an 8-year-old boy with a bruise covering half his face. But Siona looks at him and doesn't laugh. She sees something in his eyes. Something that shouldn't be in a child's eyes. She nods. Not now, but she'll come. Ethan takes the willow bark and leaves. On the way back, he does the math. Total trust points, 135. The manuscript quest is activated. Siona has been found. Her mother's notebook is the key to the knowledge of the previous time traveler. Beneath the hearth of his home lies something that has been waiting for him for 80 years. 39 days until Dorian. Ethan quickens his pace. Ethan found Siona in the forest and discovered the word antibiotic written in Cyrillic. He learned that before him, there had already been another time traveler in this world who was burned at the stake. Siona reported that something was buried beneath the hearth of Kai's house. The quest to find Volkov's manuscript has been activated. Night. Lena is sleeping against the wall. Her breathing is steady, 20 breaths per minute. Normal. Ethan sits in front of the hearth and stares at the stones. The hearth is made of river cobblestones, roughly built, no mortar. The gaps between the stones are filled with clay. Beneath the base is a dirt floor, trampled down by years of foot traffic. Ethan takes a knife, the only one in the house, a dull one. The blade is worn down to half its original thickness. He begins to pry at the clay between the foundation stones, quietly, so as not to wake Lena. The clay is old, dry. It crumbles slowly. 20 minutes later, he pulls out the first stone. Heavy. He sets it aside. The second. The third. Beneath the stones is earth, dense, caked together. He digs with the knife. The blade scrapes against something hard. Not a stone. Wood. Ethan clears it away. A plank. Old. Darkened. He pries up the edge. The plank lifts. Beneath it is a hollow space, small, about the size of a shoebox. And in this void lies a bundle, a rag, oil-soaked, thick. In the field, this kind of cloth is used to wrap things that need to be protected from moisture. Ethan pulls out the bundle. His hands are shaking, not from the cold. He unwraps it. Inside is a wooden box, simple, no lock. The lid fits tightly. He opens it. Inside is a notebook, thick, bound in leather. The leather has cracked with age, but the notebook is intact. Ethan takes it. He opens the first page and reads, slowly, letter by letter, because it's in Cyrillic, and he needs time to make out every word. The diary of Sergei Volkov, a military field surgeon. The year of our Lord 1946. And, as far as I'm concerned, the 5th year of my exile in this cursed and beloved world. To whoever is reading this, if you come after me, don't repeat my mistakes. Don't trust those in white, and take care of the girl who'll be the first to call you her own. Ethan holds his breath. The girl who'll be the first to call you her own. Lena, brother, you're warm. She called him brother on the very first night. A coincidence, or maybe not. He keeps reading. Volkov wrote densely, in small handwriting, saving paper. Ethan parsed the words slowly. He doesn't understand some of them. He guesses at others from the context. The story unfolds page by page. Sergei Volkov, surgeon, Soviet Military Hospital, 1942, Stalingrad. A piece of shrapnel in his stomach. He woke up in the body of a teenager in a village called Manhwa, 80 years ago. The same village, the same house, the same poverty. Volkov lived here for 12 years. He treated patients. He taught. He built the first infirmary. He trained 12 students. Among them was a woman named Elra, Siona's mother. No, Siona's grandmother, or her mother. Ethan gets the generations mixed up. Volkov continues writing. He describes the system, the same system, the blue frame, the glasses of trust, the store of knowledge, the diagnostic gaze. It's all the same. Volkov called it something else, the field protocol, but the essence is the same. Save lives, gain knowledge, grow. Volkov describes his achievements. He cultivated the first mold. He made the first antiseptic. He performed 23 surgeries over 10 years. 17 were successful. 6 were not. He writes down the names of those 6, every single one. He remembers each one. Ethan recognizes that feeling. You remember each one, always. Then Volkov writes about the end, the order of the healers of light. They came, many of them, with soldiers. 12 students scattered. Elra left with some of the notes. Volkov stayed behind. He knew they would burn him. He managed to hide the notebook, bury it under the hearth, write the last page. Ethan turns to the last page. The handwriting here is different, quick, uneven. The man was in a hurry. For whoever comes, I know someone will come. The system has issued a request. I don't understand how it works, but I can feel it. I have a few hours left. They're already knocking on the door. Listen, the most important thing, 3 things. First, mold grows on rye bread. Keep it warm and moist, 7 days. Green mold, not black, green. Second, alcohol. Distill it from grain. 3 distillations, no fewer. 2 won't be strong enough. Third, Don't get involved with the nobility until you become so indispensable that it's cheaper to keep you than to kill you. I got involved too soon. They killed me. Don't make the same mistake. One more thing. The Magister, the chief healer in the capital. I sent him one of my notebooks. Fool. I thought he'd understand. He did understand, just not the way I wanted him to. He hid everything and didn't show it to anyone. He only treats the rich. My knowledge has become his monopoly. Don't trust him. Watch out for him. And protect those close to you. I didn't protect them. Volkov, 1954. Ethan closes the notebook. He's sitting on the floor. In front of him is an open hearth with a hole in the base. Lena is sleeping behind him. In his hands is the notebook of a dead man who lived in this house 80 years ago and did the same thing he's doing now. And they burned him. Ethan puts the notebook back in the box back in the bundle. He doesn't hide the bundle under the hearth. No, they've already found something under the hearth once. He hides the bundle under a floorboard by the wall, under the rags on which Lena is sleeping. No one will go looking there while the girl is asleep. Then he repairs the hearth. He puts the stones back in place and smears clay over the cracks. By morning, the hearth looks just as it did before. In the morning, Siona arrives. She stands in the doorway, her back. Her mother's notebook is pressed to her chest. She stares at the floor. Ethan says, "Come in." Siona takes a step forward. Lena wakes up. She looks at the unfamiliar girl, then at Kay, then back at the girl. Then she says, "You'll be living with us too." Siona freezes. Ethan answers for her. "Yes, Siona will help with the treatments. She knows herbs." Siona enters. She sits down in the corner silently. But she's here. That's already a lot. Ethan shows her some willow bark. He explains what he wants to make. A decoction. A fever reducer for those with a fever. Siona nods. She takes some dried chamomile flowers out of her bag. She says quietly, "D, for washing wounds. My mom used to make it." Ethan smiles, his first smile since arriving in this world. That's right. Chamomile for washing. Willow bark for the fever. Honey for the throat. Boiled water for everything else. This isn't a hospital. This isn't a pharmacy. It's 4 ingredients and 2 people in a mud brick house. But it's a start. An hour later, Nora arrives, with her child. Aaron is well. His diarrhea stopped 2 days ago. She came to ask. Her neighbor, old Delma. Her legs are swollen. She can't walk. Ethan goes to see Delma. Siona goes with him. Delma is lying alone in her house. She's about 60 years old. Her legs are swollen. Her skin is taut. It's shiny. Ethan examines her. A diagnostic gaze. Heart failure. Probability 59%. Swelling in the lower extremities. Shortness of breath with minimal exertion. Bluish lips. Her heart can't keep up. He's powerless here. He has no diuretics, no cardiac glycosides, nothing that could really help. He can only provide relief. Elevate her legs, limit salt, give her hawthorn tea if Siona can find some. Ethan says to Delma, "I'll elevate your legs, every day. Drink less, cut out salt completely. If it gets worse, I'll come." Delma looks at him with cloudy eyes and says, "You're too young to be a doctor." Ethan doesn't argue. He places a rolled-up rag under her legs. He shows Nora how to adjust her position. Then he leaves. On the way back, Siona says, "Hawthorn, it's there." "Across the river." Ethan nods. "Gather some." Siona heads into the forest. Ethan returns home. Lena is sitting by the hearth, drawing with a stick on the earthen floor. Ethan looks at the drawing and pauses. Lena has drawn a circle. Inside the circle are lines, curved, childlike, yet recognizable. 2 smaller circles inside, and lines radiate upward and downward from them. Lena looked up and said there was a person inside. Ethan sat down next to her. He looked again. The 2 circles inside the big one, that's a heart. No, not a heart. 2 atria. The lines going up are the aorta and the pulmonary artery. The lines going down are the vena cava. This is a diagram of the circulation. primitive, childlike, but accurate. A 4-year-old child had drawn a diagram of the circulatory system with a stick on the dirt floor. Ethan looks at Lena. Lena looks at him. "Who showed you that?" Lena shakes her head. "No one. I saw it. When you were treating my throat, I could feel it thumping, here, and here, and here." She points to her neck, to her wrist, to the crook of her elbow. Pulse points. She feels her pulse. She feels the blood moving through her body. And she drew this, by feel, without books, without explanations. Lena Khan, 4 years old, perfect pitch, a perfect memory for numbers. Ethan puts his hand on her head. "Lena, you'll be the best doctor in the world." Lena smiles. "Better than you." Ethan shakes his head. "Much better than me." Lena's reputation, +5. Total trust points, 172. That evening, Ethan sits and thinks about the blacksmith Morn. Right side, abscess. It'll get worse in a week. When it gets worse, Morn will come. Or he won't. If he doesn't come, Ethan will go himself. Because a blacksmith means needles. A blacksmith means knives. A blacksmith means the tools without which surgery is impossible. And a blacksmith's daughter means hands that can forge steel thinner than any man in the village. Hannah. He needs Hannah. He needs the smithy. He needs an ally with strong hands and a furnace that can melt steel into surgical needles. 37 days until Dorian. Ethan closes his eyes. A plan takes shape in his mind. In a week, the blacksmith will fall ill. Ethan will cure him. And after that, the blacksmith will be his. The needles will be his. Hannah will be his. Not out of cruelty, not out of calculation, out of necessity. Because in 37 days, a man will arrive who will burn him for washing his hands, and Ethan must be ready. He must be so indispensable to this village that killing him would cost more than keeping him alive. Sergei Volkov didn't have time to become irreplaceable. They burned him. Ethan won't repeat that mistake. He falls asleep with that thought. In his dream, he sees an operating room, but not his own. An old one, wooden walls, an oil lamp instead of a surgical light, and someone else's hands over someone else's patient. The surgeon's hands, confident, quick. Volkov's hands. Blacksmith Morn held on for 9 days. On the 10th, he didn't go out to the forge. Hannah came to Kai at dawn. She stood in the doorway. She didn't come in. She stared at the floor. Her hands were clenched into fists. Her knuckles were white. She said that her father couldn't get up, that he'd had a fever since the night before, that his right side was swollen, that he wouldn't let anyone touch him. He growled and swatted at their hands. Ethan got up. He gathered what he had, strips of clean cloth, boiled and dried, a small pot of willow decoction, honey, what was left, and a knife, blunt, useless for surgery, but there was no other. He told Shiona to stay with Lena. Shiona nodded. Lena said she wanted to go. Ethan said no. Lena pursed her lips but stayed. They set off. Hannah led the way. Her strides were wide and quick. She walked like someone afraid of being late. Ethan ran after her on the short legs of an 8-year-old's body. The blacksmith shop. The heat from the forge had died down. For the first time in many years, it was cold in the smithy. Morn was lying on a bench against the wall. A large man on a narrow bench. His legs dangled. His face was gray. Sweat on his forehead. His shirt was wet. Ethan approached. A diagnostic glance. Pulse, 112. Temperature, 39.4. Right side. Abscess confirmed. Probability, 92%. It has matured. Needs to be lanced. Ethan placed his hand on the blacksmith's forehead. It was hot. Morn opened his eyes. They were cloudy and pained. He saw Kai. He frowned. He tried to stand up. The pain threw him back down. He groaned. Hannah stood nearby, holding her father's hand. Ethan said, "I need to take a look." Morn shook his head. Ethan repeated, I need to take a look, or in 2 days your daughter will have to forge on her own. Hannah flinched. Morn looked at her, then at Kay. Then he closed his eyes and nodded. Ethan lifted his shirt, right side, below the ribs. The skin was red, taut, hot to the touch. A lump the size of a fist under the skin. A fluctuation. When pressed, fluid shifts inside. Pus. A lot of it. We need to lance it. Right here, right now, with this knife. Ethan straightened up. He looked at Hannah. I need a fire, a strong one, and moonshine. Hannah blinked. Moonshine? Ethan nodded. The strongest you've got. Hannah left. She returned 10 minutes later with a clay bottle. She'd gotten it from a neighbor. Ethan opened it, sniffed it. Strong. 40 degrees, maybe more. It'll do. He lit the forge. Not as hot as for forging, but hot enough. He put the knife in the fire, waited. The blade turned red. He pulled it out, poured moonshine over it. Steam rose, the smell of alcohol and burnt metal. A makeshift sterilization. Not perfect, far from perfect, but better than nothing. He turned to Morn. It's going to hurt. A lot. Hannah, hold your father by the shoulders. Don't let him move. No matter what happens, don't let go. Hannah stood at the head of the bed. She placed her hands on her father's shoulders, a blacksmith's hands, strong, steady. Morn looked up at the ceiling. Ethan handed him the wooden handle of a hammer. Bite down. Morn clamped it between his teeth. Ethan poured moonshine over his right side. Morn growled. Ethan didn't wait. The knife went in quickly. 1 cut, 2 centimeters, shallow. Pus gushed out immediately. Yellow, thick. The smell, one that Ethan wouldn't have batted an eye at in his past life. But here, in the body of a child who hadn't eaten properly for 10 days, it nearly made him vomit. He swallowed. He continued. He widened the incision with his fingers. His small fingers entered the abscess cavity. He felt the edges, the capsule. He had to remove it all, every drop of pus. Otherwise, it would come back. Morn screamed through the piece of wood clenched between his teeth. Hannah held him. She didn't let go. Her face was pale. Her eyes were dry. She wasn't crying. She just held him. Ethan cleaned it out. He squeezed. He rinsed it with boiled water. Squeezed again. Rinsed again. Then he poured moonshine over it. Morn arched his back. Hannah leaned in with all her weight. Ethan placed a rag moistened with honey on the wound. He bandaged it with a strip of clean cloth. He stepped back. His hands were covered in blood and pus. They were shaking. He was 8 years old, and he had just lanced an abscess with a dull knife, without anesthesia, without antibiotics, without anything. Morn lay there. He was breathing heavily, but he was breathing. 10 minutes later, he fell asleep. His body had shut down from the pain. Ethan washed his hands with moonshine. He looked at Hannah. She was sitting on the floor next to the bench, holding her father's hand. She wasn't looking at Kay. She said, "He'll live." It wasn't a question. Ethan replied, "Yes, as long as it doesn't get infected. Change the bandage twice a day. Rinse it with boiled water. Then put honey on a rag and wrap it up again. Rub moonshine on the wound every time. It'll hurt. Don't hold back." Hannah nodded. Then she turned to him. Her eyes were red and dry. She said, "You said you need needles." Ethan nodded. Hannah stood up. She went to the brazier. She stoked the fire. She took the tongs. She pulled a thin steel rod from the supply. She sat down at the anvil and began to forge. She forged all night. Ethan sat next to Morn and monitored his breathing. Every hour he checked his temperature, changed the cloth, gave him willow decoction. Morn woke up twice, groaned, fell back asleep. By dawn, Hannah placed 12 needles on the cloth in front of Kai. Thin, sharp, with a small eye at the end. She'd made them from a steel rod in a single night, with hands that had held a hammer since she was 7. Ethan picked up one needle. He turned it over in his fingers. Sharp. Smooth. Not 21st century surgical steel, but perfect for this world. He looked at Hannah. He said, "Thank you. You're a genius." Hannah froze. She blinked. She turned away. She said, "Shut up, kid." But her voice wavered. Plus 120 trust points. Level 1. Surgery unlocked. Sterile field unlocked. Hannah plus 20. Reputation. Blacksmith's Family Alliance. Total balance. 292. Ethan stared at the needles and counted. He had already reached the basic set of sterile procedures. The system had automatically unlocked them after the operation. Knowledge flooded into his head. Not as text, as memory. As if he had always known it but forgotten, and now remembered. Sterile field, hand, clean zones, dressing rules, drainage. All of this was now lodged in his head as firmly as the multiplication table. Morn woke up around noon. He sat up. He touched his side. He winced, but the fever had subsided. 37 and 6. He looked at Kay. "Boy, what did you do to me?" Ethan replied, "I cut open the abscesses, removed the pus. If you listen to me, you'll be back on your feet in a week." Morn was silent. Then he said, "My father died from the same thing, on his right side. The healer told him to pray. He prayed for 2 months. Then he died." Ethan didn't answer. Morn looked at the needles on the rag, at his daughter, who was sleeping on the floor by the anvil, curled up like a cat, at the boy in a dirty shirt with a bruise on his cheekbone and the hands of a surgeon in a child's body. Then he said, "What else do you need?" Ethan sat down across from him. "I need a knife, a small one, a thin one, sharper than a razor, and another one, bigger, and forceps. I'll draw a diagram. And I need Hannah, every day, for 2 hours. I'll teach her." Morn frowned. "Teach her what?" Ethan looked him in the eye. "To save people." 28 days until Dorian. Ethan counts down every day. Every morning he wakes up, and the first thing he does is subtract 1. 47, 46, 32, 28. Time isn't slowing down. It's speeding up. Over the past 2 weeks, life in Moonhole has begun to change. Not quickly, not dramatically, but noticeably. 11 households are boiling water. Diarrhea among the children has almost completely stopped. Nora has become the first volunteer helper. She goes from house to house and shows the women how to prepare the solution. Salt, ash, honey, water. 4 ingredients that save children from death by dehydration. Nora doesn't understand why it works. She just sees that it works. That's enough. Toby became the second helper. The boy carries water, a lot of it, every day, from the well to the houses. Ethan taught him to filter it through a cloth before boiling. It's not perfect, but it removes the coarse dirt. Shiona comes from the forest every day. She brings herbs, willow bark, chamomile, plantain, yarrow, and hawthorn for Delma. She's started talking a little more. Her stutter hasn't gone away, but her words have gotten longer. Her sentences are more complete. She shows Ethan the plants from her mother's notebook. He reads the notes in the margins. Cyrillic, Volkov's handwriting. Sometimes he understands, sometimes he doesn't. But every bit of information is a building block. Hannah works in the smithy. Morn was back at the forge in 6 days, sooner than Ethan expected. Blacksmiths are tough. The wound is healing cleanly. The honey is working. Hannah forged every evening after her regular work. A knife. Thin. Sharp. Ethan drew the shape with a stick on the ground. Hannah looked at it. She snorted. She said it looked more like the claw of a sick cat than a knife. Then she forged exactly what he'd asked for. A blade as wide as a pinky finger, 8 centimeters long, sharpened on one side. Not a scalpel, but closer to a scalpel than anything that had existed in this world until today. Ethan took the knife in his hand. His fingers rested on the handle. A familiar feeling, a different weight, a different balance. But his hand remembered. 12 years of training and practice don't disappear when transferred to another body. Different muscles, same memory. He began to practice. Every evening. On meat. Toby brought scraps from the mine. Ethan cut. He sewed. With Hannah's needles. With thread made from sinew. Sion soaked the thread in moonshine. A makeshift catgut. It doesn't dissolve like the real thing, but it holds the stitch. Lena sat nearby and watched. She didn't look away. Another child would have been scared. Lena watched and memorized. 3 days later, she said, "Brother, you're making 5 stitches on this piece, and 6 on that one. That one's thicker." Ethan stopped. He looked. She was right. He'd been making stitches of the same length. The thicker piece of meat needed more. She'd counted the stitches and spotted the discrepancy faster than he had. Hannah came for 2 hours every evening. Ethan taught her not how to forge, but how to assist, to hand him tools, hold the edges of the wound, and clamp the blood vessels. She was a quick learner. Her hands, accustomed to precise work with red-hot metal, weren't afraid of blood. She didn't faint. She didn't tremble. When Ethan first showed her what a wound looked like from the inside on a piece of meat, she looked at it and said, "It looks like the cut you make when you carve a groove in a horseshoe, only wetter." Ethan laughed, for the first time in this world, truly. Hannah looked at him strangely. Then she turned away. The trouble came on the 26th day. Elder Kern. He hadn't been seen for 2 weeks, ever since the day Ethan told him about the tumor. He sat in his house, touching his neck, drinking, angry, and he was writing. Ethan found out about this from Toby. Toby knew everything that was going on in the village because Toby was everywhere. The boy on the fence who sees everything and whom everyone treats like a piece of furniture. Toby said it. The village elder had sent a messenger, to the city, to the church. Ethan froze. When, 3 days ago, Ethan did the math. The messenger would reach the town in 2 days. Dorian would receive the letter, read it, get ready. The trip back would take 2 days. Dorian would arrive sooner. Not in 26 days, sooner. Maybe in 15. Maybe in 10. Maybe he's already on his way. Ethan stood in the street and looked down the eastern road. Empty. Still empty. Shiona stood beside him. She understood without words. Her face went pale. She knew what a visit from people in white clothes meant. Her mother knew too. Ethan said, "We need to speed things up." Shiona asked, "What are you going to do?" Ethan replied, "The same as before. Treat them, only faster, and more of them, so that when Dorian arrives, he'll have no choice." Ethan went to Nora. He said, "Gather all the women whose children were sick. Everyone who boils water. Everyone who's seen how the solution helps. Bring them to me, tomorrow morning." Nora nodded. In the morning, 9 women arrived, with their children. Ethan stood before them, an 8-year-old boy facing 9 adult women. He spoke calmly and clearly. "The disease lives in dirty water, in dirty hands, in dirty rags. Boiling kills the disease. Washing your hands kills the disease. A clean bandage keeps the disease from entering a wound. This isn't heresy, it's the truth. Your children are alive because you boiled water." The women listened. They were silent. One said, "And what will the healer say when he arrives?" Ethan replied, "The healer will say that disease is a punishment from the light. Ask him why the punishment stops when you boil water." Silence. Then another woman said, "My Eric hasn't been sick for 2 weeks, for the first time in half a year." A third woman said, "My elderly mother's stomach pain has stopped." A fourth woman remained silent but nodded. Ethan said, "I need your help. An inquisitor will arrive in a few days. He'll ask what's going on here. It's up to you what you tell him. I won't ask you to lie. I'll ask you to remember that your children are alive." The women left. Ethan didn't know whose side they were on. He knew only that their children were alive, and that the mother remembered who had saved her child. That evening, he sat by the hearth and did the math. Total balance, 341 trust points. Daily quests added 10 at a time. Rescues added 20 to 30. He treated patients every day. Dehydration, intestinal infections, wounds, burns. Trivial matters by the standards of a resident surgeon. Matters of life and death by the standards of a village where the only treatment is prayer. Hannah came in the evening. She sat down next to him. She placed a bundle on the floor. Inside was a second knife, a larger one, and 2 clamps. Rough, heavy, but they worked. Ethan picked up a clamp. He pressed it. The spring snapped into place. He squeezed. He let go. It works. He looked at Hannah. She wasn't looking at him. She was staring into the fire. She said, "You little one, do you really think you can?" Ethan asked, "Do I can what?" Hannah said, "All of this. Heal people, argue with the church, not burn to death." Ethan was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I don't know." Hannah turned. She fed him, for a long time. Then she said, "All right, I don't know either. But if you go, I'll go with you." She stood up and left. Ethan sat there staring at the clamps. 2 steel brackets held together by a spring. The first surgical clamp in the history of the Kingdom of Villain, forged by a 15-year-old girl who had never even heard the word surgery. He put the clamps away with the needles, wrapped them in a clean cloth, put them in a box. Lena was already asleep. Siona was sitting in the corner, copying something from her mother's notebook onto a new sheet of paper. Ethan asked, "What are you writing?" Siona showed him. A list of herbs, with dosages, with drawings, just in case they took the notebook. Ethan nodded. Smart. Siona smiled slightly, the first time she'd done so in front of him. Then she wiped the smile away and lowered her eyes. Ethan lay down and closed his eyes. He dreamed of a house on fire with someone screaming inside. Dorian arrived on the 21st day, sooner than Ethan had expected. It was an ordinary morning. Lena was checking the pulse on a rag doll that Shiona had sewn from scraps of cloth. Shiona was drying chamomile by the window. Ethan was changing the bandage on old Gent, who had cut his hand with an axe 3 days ago. The wound was clean. It was healing. Honey and clean bandages were doing what the healer's prayers had never been able to do. Then Toby burst through the door. His face was pale. "They're coming. From the west. 2 on horses, white robes, the cross of light." Ethan set down the bandage. He stood up. His hands didn't tremble. He'd been expecting this. Not this soon, but he'd been expecting it. He told Shiona, "Hide the notebook. Both notebooks. Yours and the one under the floorboard. Hide them in the woods." Shiona turned pale. She grabbed the notebooks. She disappeared through the back wall of the house where the plank was loose. Ethan told Toby, "Go to Hannah. Tell her Dorian has arrived. Have her hide the needles and knives, everything I gave her, everything she forged for me." Toby ran off. Ethan looked at Lena. Lena was looking at him. She didn't understand what was happening, but she could sense it. Children sense adults' fear, even if an adult hides it behind a calm voice. Ethan crouched down. He took her hands. He said, "A man is coming now, in white clothes. He'll ask questions. You don't know anything." "I'm your brother. I'm just giving you water and porridge." "Do you understand?" Lena nodded. She understood. Ethan went out into the street. The village fell silent. People hid. Doors were shut. Windows were boarded up. It's always like this when the men in white arrive. 2 horsemen rode in along the main road. The first wore a simple white cassock. He was young, an assistant. The second on a large horse. His robe was white with a gold trim along the edge. His hood was thrown back. His face was gaunt and long. His nose was sharp. His eyes were light, cold. His hair was gray, though he was no older than 40. On his belt was the golden symbol of light. Father Dorian, Inquisitor Healer of the Eastern District. He dismounted at the village headman's house. Kern came out to meet him. A bow, low, cowardly. Ethan stood by his house 3 yards away and watched. A diagnostic glance at Dorian. Pulse 74. Healthy, calm, confident. No abnormalities. A healthy fanatic. The most dangerous kind. Dorian went into the village headman's house. The door closed. Ethan waited. An hour. 2. Then Dorian came out. He walked through the village, from house to house. He went in. He came out. He asked questions. Ethan couldn't hear the questions, but he saw the faces of the people who came out after his visit. Pale, frightened. Dorian reached Kay's house around noon. He walked in without knocking. The door flew open from the force of his palm. Ethan was sitting on the floor. Lena was beside him. Dorian stood in the doorway. Light shone from behind him. A white cassock, a golden symbol. He looked at Kay, then at Lena. Then he scanned the room. The hearth. The clean floor, too clean for the home of a poor boy. Pots of boiled water, bundles of herbs on the wall, rags, washed, dried, and stacked in a pile. Dorian saw it all. Ethan saw what he was seeing. Dorian spoke. His voice was soft, calm, confident. "I'm told you heal people, boy." Ethan replied, "I help my neighbors." Dorian smiled. His thin lips stretched into a smile. The smile didn't reach his eyes. "You help," Dorian said. "The village elder says you name the illnesses. You tell people to boil water. You lay your hands on their wounds." Ethan remained silent. Dorian continued, "You know what that is, boy? It's heresy. Illness is sent by the light. The light heals. Human hands have no right to touch what the light has determined. If the light has decided that a person should be sick, then they are sick. If it has decided that they should die, then they die. Who are you to argue with the light?" Ethan listened. Inside, it was cold, pure, icy. He'd heard such talk before, in lectures on the history of medicine. That's what those who burned women for gathering herbs in the 15th century used to say. Those who forbade washing hands because it was an insult to God's will. Those who killed Semmelweis. Those who burned Sergei Volkov. Ethan said, "I understand, Father." Dorian looked at him for a long time. Then he turned and left. Ethan exhaled. It was too soon. Dorian wasn't finished. He had only just begun. He would walk through the village, asking questions, taking notes, search. Ethan clenched everything he had into a fist and waited. The next 3 days were hell. Dorian interrogated everyone, every house, every family. He asked about Kai, about the water, about the rags, about the treatment. People responded in different ways. Some remained silent. Some shook their heads. Nora said the boy had simply given the child some water. Mirta said she knew nothing. But some spoke up, out of fear, out of a desire to please, out of a habit of obeying the white-robed man. The carpenter's wife said that Kai had told her to wash her hands before eating. Old man Hem said that the boy boiled water as if it were contaminated. On the 3rd evening, Dorian came to Kai again. He sat down across from him. He took a scroll from behind his belt. He unrolled it. He began to read. 7 testimonies regarding unorthodox treatment. 3 testimonies regarding the pronouncement of diagnoses without the blessing of the light. 1 testimony regarding the dissection of a body with a knife. "Mourn, the blacksmith," someone said. Dorian rolled up the scroll. He looked at Kai. He said, "Tomorrow morning I will hold the trial of the light. You will stand before the village. If you're found guilty, you and your sister will come with me." Ethan looked at Dorian. Blood was pounding in his head. 120 beats. He took Lena's hand. Lena squeezed his fingers. Dorian left. The night was long. Ethan didn't sleep. He sat and thought. There was no plan. There was no plan A. There was no plan B. There was only one option: to become so indispensable that he couldn't be killed. Right tomorrow, right at the trial, he needed a miracle. Or a patient. Morning. Dorian led Kay out onto the square in front of the chapel. The whole village had gathered, not of their own free will. By order. People stood in a circle. Their faces were gray, their eyes fixed on the ground. No one was looking at Kay. Dorian stood at the chapel door, a white cassock, a golden symbol, a scroll in his hand. He began to speak. His voice was loud, solemn. Words about the light, about heresy, about punishment, about the boy who fancied himself a healer. Ethan stood there, listening, waiting. And then it happened. A scream rang out from the right, a woman's scream, piercing. Everyone turned around. Kern's wife was on her knees. A boy lay on the ground in front of her, about 12 years old, Kern's son. He was curled up, clutching his stomach with both hands. His face was pale, sweat, vomit. Ethan watched, a diagnostic glance, pulse, 130, temperature, 38.9, abdomen, right iliac region, muscle tension, positive Stetkin-Blumberg sign, appendicitis, acute, probability, 94%. If not operated on within the next few hours, peritonitis. If peritonitis, death. The boy screamed again. Kern rushed to his son. He fell to his knees. He was shaking. The face of a man who realizes his child is dying. Dorian stood there. He watched. He didn't move. Kern turned to him. "Father Dorian, help me, my son." Dorian took a step forward. He knelt down next to the boy. He placed a hand on his forehead. He closed his eyes. He whispered a prayer. Ethan watched. A prayer. Against appendicitis. The boy would die in 6 hours, maybe 8. The prayer wouldn't help. Nothing would help except a scalpel. Kern shook Dorian by the shoulder. "He's dying! Do something!" Dorian opened his eyes. He said, "The light will decide. If the boy is meant to live, he will live." Kern looked at him, at the man in the white robe who had just sentenced his son to death, with words about the will of the light. And then Kern turned to Kay. That very same Kern, the one who wrote the denunciation, the one who brought Dorian here, the one who wanted to enslave Kay. He was kneeling in the mud before the 8-year-old boy, and his face showed nothing but a father's horror. He said, "Save him. I'll take it all back. Everything." Silence fell over the square. Ethan looked at Dorian. Dorian looked at him. In his eyes was a warning, a threat, the promise of a bonfire. Ethan looked at the boy on the ground, 12 years old, pulse 130, 6 o'clock. Dorian arrived on the 21st day and began his investigation. In 3 days, he gathered 7 testimonies against Kay and convened the Court of Light. That morning in the square, during the trial, the son of Chief Kern collapsed with acute appendicitis. Kern, on his knees, begged Kay to save the boy. Dorian watched. Ethan took a step forward, then another. He knelt down next to the boy. He placed his hand on the boy's abdomen, right iliac region, hard, muscle guarding. The boy screamed at the touch. Ethan withdrew his hand. The scream grew louder. Stetkin, Blumberg sign. The pain is worse when the pressure is released than when it's applied. Classic. Appendicitis confirmed. Surgery is needed. Here, now, in the square, in front of the whole village, in front of Dorian. Ethan raised his head. He spoke loudly. "I need a table, a clean one. Boiled water, lots of it. Rags, clean ones. Moonshine, and Hannah." Silence. No one moved. Ethan repeated himself. "A table, water, rags, moonshine, Hannah, now, or the boy will die." Nora ran first. Myrta followed her. Toby dashed toward the blacksmith shop. 5 minutes later, a table stood in front of Kai, a wooden one, from the tavern. Toby and 2 men dragged it out to the town square. Hannah came running. In her hands, a bundle. Needles, knives, clamps. She'd hidden them at her place and not in the blacksmith shop. Smart. Ethan told the 4 men, "Lift the boy onto the table, carefully." They lifted him. The boy was moaning. His eyes were rolling back. Ethan doused the table with moonshine. He doused his hands up to his elbows. It stung. The smell of alcohol hung in the air. Hannah stood nearby. Ethan looked at her. Her face was calm. She nodded. Ready. Ethan unwrapped the bundle. A knife. Thin. Sharp. Needles. Clamps. Threads soaked in moonshine. Boiled rags. He laid everything out on a clean cloth next to the table. Dorian stood 3 steps away, watching, not interfering, for now. Ethan lifted the boy's shirt, exposed his stomach, poured moonshine over his right side. The boy flinched. Hannah pressed his shoulders against the table. Ethan took the knife in his hand. He looked at Kern. The village head stood next to his wife. Both were white. Ethan said, "Moonshine. Give him a drink. A lot. This is going to hurt." Kern grabbed the bottle, brought it to his son's lips, poured it in. The boy coughed, swallowed. More. 5 minutes later, the boy's eyes grew glassy. Not anesthesia. Intoxication. The best he could offer. Ethan exhaled. The first incision. Right iliac region. McBurney's point. He knew where it was. 2 centimeters. The knife went in. The skin parted. Blood. A little. Subcutaneous tissue. Thin. The boy was skinny. That was good. Fewer layers. He spread the muscles apart. He didn't cut. He spread them apart. With a blunt separation. With his fingers. His little fingers, which were perfect for this job. For the first time, his small stature was an advantage. The peritoneum, a thin membrane. He made an incision. The cavity opened up. The smell. Pus. The appendix had already started to fester. A few more hours and it would have perforated. He found the appendix. Red. Swollen. The size of a finger. He took a clamp. Clamped the base. A second clamp below it. Suture thread. Hannah handed it to him. He tied off the base. 2 knots. 3. Then he took the scalpel. He severed the appendix between the clamps. Tossed it onto a rag. A red piece of flesh the size of a pinky. He didn't celebrate. It was too early. He rinsed the cavity with boiled water, then with moonshine. The boy cried out even through his intoxication. Hannah held him. Ethan examined him. Clean. No perforation. No spreading pus. He'd made it in time. He began to suture, layer by layer. The peritoneum, the muscles, subcutaneous tissue, skin. Hannah's needles slid into the tissue like butter. The stitches were even. 5 per layer. Threads made from sinew, rough, but they held. The last stitch. He tied a knot, cut the thread, placed a cloth soaked in honey over the wound, bandaged it, stepped back. His hands were covered in blood. They were shaking, but the job was done. Silence reigned in the square. Absolute silence. 100 people stood and watched as an 8-year-old boy cut a piece out of another boy's stomach, and the boy didn't die. The boy on the table was breathing. Steadily. Pulse, 110. It's dropping. Temperature 38.2. Stable. He's alive. Ethan turned. He looked at Dorian. Dorian was standing there. His face was expressionless. His eyes were burning. Ethan saw hatred in those eyes. Pure, intense. But alongside the hatred stood helplessness. Dorian couldn't say anything. He couldn't accuse him. Not here. Not now. Not in front of the mother who was sobbing and kissing Kay's hands. Not in front of the father who was on his knees, trembling. Not in front of the village that had seen it all with their own eyes. Ethan looked Dorian in the eyes. Ethan said, "Father, the light doesn't punish children with appendicitis. The light provides hands to cut it out." Silence. Then a sound, quiet at first, then louder. The clapping of hands. Someone was clapping. Then someone else. Then another. Not applause. Not a standing ovation. Just people clapping their hands together because they didn't know how else to express what they were feeling. Dorian turned around. He mounted his horse. His assistant followed him. They rode off. Without a word. Without a trial. Without a verdict. Ethan stood in the square. His hands were covered in blood. His head was spinning. He was dizzy. 8 years. He hadn't eaten since yesterday. He hadn't slept all night. He'd just performed an appendectomy with a dull knife. No anesthesia, no antibiotics, nothing. Hannah stood beside him. She said, "Little one, you're staggering." Ethan nodded. She picked him up with one hand like a sack and carried him home. Plus 300 trust points, public recognition, district reputation up by 40. Dorian, enemy identified. The first appendectomy in Valen's history. Hannah set him down on the floor at home. Lena rushed to him, wrapped her arms around him. Ethan hugged his sister, closed his eyes. He'd won. This battle, not the war. Dorian left, but he didn't lose. Dorian left to come back with someone bigger. Ethan knew that. But today, the boy is alive. Today, the village cheered. Today, that's enough. The evening after the surgery, Ethan is lying on the floor and can't get up. His body is giving out. He's 8 years old. He hasn't eaten in a day. He hasn't slept in 30 hours. He performed a surgery that, in his past life, had taken 40 minutes in a sterile operating room with a full surgical team and an anesthesiologist. Here, it took 20 minutes on a wooden table, using moonshine instead of anesthesia. His body gave out. Lena is sitting next to him, holding his hand. Siona has returned from the forest. She brought the notebooks back, both of them. She's cooking porridge from the grains Nora brought. The porridge smells good. Ethan catches the scent and realizes he's so hungry he'd eat dirt. Siona feeds him with a spoon. He wants to refuse. Inside, he's 26 years old. He's a surgical resident. A 17-year-old girl is feeding him with a spoon. But his body is that of an 8-year-old. His hands won't lift. He eats. The porridge is warm, salty, the best porridge of his life. Lena is eating next to him. Siona eats last. Ethan notices this. She always eats last. She checks to make sure everyone has had enough. Then she finishes what's left. A habit of someone who lived on the brink of starvation for 3 years. At night, Hannah comes in. She knocks quietly. She comes in. She sits down next to him, silently. She brings bread, warm, fresh. Toby's mother baked it, for Kay. Ethan takes it, breaks it off, gives a piece to Lena, a piece to Siona, a piece to Hannah. Hannah shakes her head. "I'm full." Ethan knows she's lying. He sees how she's looking at the bread, but she refuses it, because that's how she was raised. "Give it to the others. Save some for yourself later." Ethan places a piece on her lap, without asking. Hannah says nothing. Then she eats. The 4 of them sit by the hearth. Lena, Siona, Hannah, Kai. The first time all together. The first time without urgency, without shouting. No blood. They're just sitting there, eating bread. Lena falls asleep first. She rests her head on Kai's lap. Siona takes out her mother's notebook and quietly flips through the pages by the light of the hearth. Hannah stares into the fire. She's silent. Then she speaks. "He'll come back." Ethan nods. "Yes," Hannah says. "With someone. A bigger one." Ethan nods again. Hannah is silent. Then she says, "The small one. When you cut open his stomach, out there in the square." "You were scared," Ethan thinks. Then he replies, "No. I was scared before. But when the knife is in my hand, there's no fear. There's only work." Hannah nods. "Me too. When I'm forging, I'm scared it won't work out. But then the hammer's in my hand and that's it. Just metal and fire." She falls silent. Then she says very quietly, "Thank you for being alive, little one." And right then, the door opens. Nora. Her face is terrified. "Kai, Pern's wife. She's in labor. Something's wrong. Blood. A lot of blood." Ethan stands up. His body protests. Every muscle aches. He stands up. He grabs the bundle of tools. He walks away. Hannah follows him. No words. No questions. Pern's house. The merchant is sitting on the threshold. His face is green. His hands are shaking. There's a scream from inside. Ethan goes in. A woman is lying on the bed, about 30 years old. Her belly is enormous. Contractions, but they're irregular. Ethan approaches. A diagnostic glance. Pulse, 140. Blood pressure is dropping. Bleeding. The source? Placenta previa. 78% probability. The placenta is covering the cervix. Every contraction tears a piece of the placenta away from the wall. Blood. A lot of blood. In the 21st century, this calls for an emergency C-section. Here he has nothing. No operating room, no blood for transfusions, no anesthesia. If he performs a C-section, the woman will bleed to death on the operating table. If he doesn't, she'll bleed to death in bed. Ethan stands there thinking. 3 seconds. 5. 10. Options. First, C-section. No anesthesia, no blood. 90% risk of death. Second, wait. Hope the placenta shifts. 80% risk of death. Third, try to turn the baby. External version. Change the fetus's position to reduce pressure on the placenta. Risk. 60%. The best of the worst. Ethan washes his hands with moonshine. He approaches, places his hands on her belly, feels the baby through the wall of her abdomen. The head, on the left, high up. It needs to be lowered. Turn it. He's pushing. Slowly. Gently. The woman is screaming. Hannah is holding her by the shoulders. Ethan is moving the baby inside, millimeter by millimeter. His hands are small, sensitive. He feels every movement of the fetus through the thin wall of her abdomen. The head is shifting. Slowly. Down. To the right. The pressure on the placenta is easing. The bleeding is slowing. It hasn't stopped, but it's slowing. Ethan holds, pushes, more, just a little more. A contraction, strong. The woman screams, pushes. Ethan feels the head descending into the pelvis. Correct position. The baby is coming. On its own. Now on its own. Ethan steps back. He tells Hannah, hold her legs. He tells Nora, rags, clean ones, hot water. The birth is going fast. 10 minutes. Head, shoulders, body. A boy, small, wet, silent, not crying. Ethan takes him, turns him over, pats him on the back. Nothing. Again, the boy is silent. Ethan clears his mouth with a finger. Mucus, a lot of it. Wipes it away. Another pat. A cry. High-pitched. Weak, but a cry. The boy is breathing. Ethan places him on his mother's chest. The woman is crying. Pern stands in the doorway and cries. Hannah stands with rags in her hands and isn't crying, but her hands are shaking. Bleeding. Ethan checks. The placenta has come out. Intact. There's blood, but it's not life-threatening. The uterus is contracting. He places a cold cloth on her stomach. He massages it. The uterus firms up. The bleeding stops. The woman will live. The baby will live. Ethan walks out of the house. Night. Stars. It's cold. He sits down on the ground by the wall. His hands are covered in blood. Someone else's blood. For the second time today. Hannah follows him outside. She sits down beside him. She's silent. Then she drapes her jacket over his shoulder. A blacksmith's jacket. Heavy, warm. It smells of iron and smoke. She says, "You're as small as a sparrow. You'll freeze." Ethan sits under her jacket and looks up at the stars. Plus 80 trust points. Saving a mother and her child. Total balance, 713. He closes his eyes. His head falls onto his shoulder. He falls asleep right here, against the wall of Pern's house, under Hannah's jacket. Hannah doesn't move. She sits beside him and stares at the empty street. Her hand rests on the handle of the hammer she's worn at her belt since she was 12. She stands guard. In the morning, people arrive, with food, with gratitude. Pern brings a sack of grain. Nora brings milk, goat's milk, for Lena. Mirta brings a blanket, an old one, but warm. Toby brings news, bad news. Dorian hasn't gone far. He's stopped in the neighboring village. He's waiting for someone. Toby heard it from a merchant who was traveling from the west. Someone is following Dorian. Someone in a white cassock but with a gold belt. Not just a healer, someone higher up. Ethan listens. A gold belt. That's a bishop. Ethan remembers from the materials he studied while preparing for Dorian's visit. A white robe with a gold trim is a healer. A white robe with a gold belt is a bishop. 2 ranks higher. Valen. Ethan thinks. Dorian couldn't handle it on his own. He called in the higher-ups, or the higher-ups came on their own, because rumors travel faster than horses. A boy from a poor village cut a piece out of another boy's stomach, and the boy survived. Rumors like that don't stay in the village. Rumors like that spread far and wide. Ethan stands in the doorway of the house and looks down the western road. Beyond it lies the horizon. Beyond the horizon is the man who will decide his fate. Not Dorian. Dorian was just a face. The real enemy is the brain, and the brain is already on its way. Ethan walks into the house. Lena is sitting on the floor, drawing with a stick. A new drawing. A man on the table. A little man standing next to him, holding a knife. There are lots of people around. She drew the operation, just as she remembered it, from what Hannah had told her. Ethan looks at the drawing, then at Lena. Then he says, "Lena, if anyone comes for me, you'll leave with Shiona. Into the woods. It's safe there." Lena shakes her head. "No." Ethan repeats, "Lena, this is important." Lena looks at him. Her eyes are wide, dark, dry. She says, "Brother, I dreamed that you were leaving. You won't leave, will you?" Ethan sits down beside her. He takes her hand. "I won't leave." Lena rests her head on his shoulder. He sits there, staring at the wall. Beyond the wall lies a world where they want to burn him for washing his hands. Before him stands his sister, who believes he will stay. He'll stay, no matter what it takes. Valen arrived 4 days later, not alone. With him was a detachment of 8 soldiers in chainmail and carrying swords, 2 aides in white robes, and Dorian, who rode slightly behind, gazing at Moonhall with the face of a man who had returned for revenge. Ethan stood by the window and counted. 10 men, armed, against a village where the most dangerous weapon is a carpenter's axe. Valen dismounted at the village headman's house. Ethan saw him for the first time. Tall, broad-shouldered, about 50 years old. His face was smooth and well-groomed. His hands were white, not the hands of a laborer, but those of a man who had never lifted anything heavier than a pen or a goblet. He wore a white cassock with a gold sash, 2 rings on his fingers, gold. He moved slowly, confidently, like a man to whom everything around him belongs, and he knows it. A diagnostic gaze, pulse 70, blood pressure normal, healthy, absolutely healthy. No abnormalities, no weak spots. Ethan stepped back from the window. Siona was standing in the corner, pale, her hands pressed against her chest. She recognized the clothes, a white robe with a gold sash, the same kind worn by those who had come for her mother. Ethan said, "Hide the notebooks, like last time." Siona shook her head. "No, he brought soldiers. They'll be searching the forest, too." Ethan thought, she's right. Last time Dorian was alone. There was no one to search. Now there are 8 soldiers. They'll comb through the forest around the village in an hour. Ethan said, "Hannah, the forge. The fire burns all day. No one will notice if a couple of extra notebooks end up in the forge." Siona flinched. She understood. Ethan wasn't talking about hiding the notebooks in the forge. He was talking about being ready to burn them. If they come, if they search, better to burn them than to hand them over. Siona pressed those notebooks to her chest. Then she nodded. She took both notebooks. She went to see Hannah. Lena sat quietly. She didn't ask any questions. She already knew. When the people in white come, you have to stay silent and still. 4 years, and she already knew that. Ethan went out onto the street. He wasn't going to hide. Hiding was pointless. Valen had come for him. Everyone knew it. He knew it. Better to go out on his own. Valen was standing by the village headman's house talking to Kern. Kern was nodding, slightly, often, like a dog trying to please. Ethan approached. He stopped 10 paces away. He waited. Valen turned. He looked at him, for a long time, with interest, like a scientist examining an insect that turned out to be more complex than expected. Then he smiled. A warm smile, gentle, fatherly. Ethan understood immediately. This man is 100 times more dangerous than Dorian. Dorian was a fanatic. A fanatic is predictable. Valen is no fanatic. Wallen is a politician. A politician is unpredictable. Wallen spoke. His voice was soft, deep. So this is who you are. The boy who cuts open people's stomachs and they live. Ethan remained silent. Wallen moved closer. He crouched down to be at Kai's eye level. Not condescendingly, respectfully, as if he were talking to a jeep. Ethan knew this trick. Manipulation. Creating the illusion of closeness. But knowing that didn't make it any less effective. The tactic worked. Valen said, "I didn't come here to burn you." Dorian acted on impulse. He's a man of faith, and sometimes faith clouds the mind. I'm a different sort of person. I came to talk. Ethan looked into his eyes. Clear, blue. The eyes of a man who lies as easily as he breathes. Wallen stood up. He said, "Let's go. Show me what you're doing." Ethan led him to Kern's house. The village headman's son was lying on a bench. The suture was healing. His temperature was 37. The wound was clean. The honey was working. The boy was eating porridge and complaining that it hurt to turn over. Valen looked at the suture for a long time. He touched the edge of the wound with his finger. The boy flinched. Valen straightened up. His face was impassive. Then they went to Pern's house. Pern's wife was feeding her newborn. She was healthy, pale, but alive. The baby was suckling. Valen watched. He said nothing. Then he went out into the street. He stood there. He looked at the village, at the clean yards, at the well where women stood with their pots, at the smoke rising from the chimneys where water was boiling. Then he turned to Kay and said, "Boy, I'm impressed." Ethan waited. Valen continued, "You're talented, that's obvious. The question is what to do with that talent. There are two paths. The first, you stay here, in the mud, in poverty. You treat peasants who'll pay you with an egg and a crust of bread. In a year or so, another inquisitor will arrive, one less patient than Dorian, and you'll be burned at the stake. Or, the second, you come with me. I'll grant you the Order's protection. You'll heal under the banner of the light. Officially. Legally. No bonfires. No interrogations. You'll get tools, supplies, students, everything you want, but only under my name." Ethan listened, and he understood. Valen wasn't offering salvation. Valen was offering absorption. To become part of the Order meant becoming its property. His knowledge would become the Order's knowledge. His methods would become methods that Valen would sell for gold. Free treatment for the poor would end the day he stepped into a carriage. Ethan remembered Volkov's notebook. Master A. Vrelius. Volkov had sent him the manuscript. He thought the other man would understand. The other man did understand. He hid everything. He began treating only the rich, a monopoly. Ethan said, "Thank you, Bishop Valen. I need to think it over." Valen nodded. "Of course, think it over. You have 2 days, then I'll leave with or without you. If without you, I can't guarantee that the Order's next visit will be as peaceful." He smiled, warmly, affectionately, then went into the village headman's house. Ethan stood on the street and felt something tighten inside him. 2 days. 2 days to find a way out of a trap with no way out. Going with Valen meant losing everything. Staying meant waiting for the pyre. That night, May came. Ethan didn't know who she was. The door opened. A girl stood in the doorway, about 19 years old, black hair, short, cut with a knife. Her face was thin, angular. Her eyes were dark, cold. A knife was tucked into her belt. She walked in without asking. She closed the door, sat down, looked at Kay, said, "Boy, they're looking for you. I came to help, because I hate them more than I'm afraid of you." Ethan looked at her, a diagnostic gaze, pulse 90, elevated, stress. Old scars on her wrists, rope marks. Not a suicide attempt. Restraint. Long ago. Years ago. Right rib. Mended incorrectly. A fracture. 2 or 3 years old. Ethan said, "Who are you?" The girl replied, "May Kim, a former novice of the Order of Light Healers. She ran away 2 years ago. She knew Valen. She knew him from the inside. She knew his weaknesses, and she came to tell the story." May spoke for 2 hours, quietly, quickly, without pauses, like someone who had kept these words locked away for years and had finally found someone to share them with. She described the order from the inside, how the light healers treat the sick, prayers, bloodletting, holy water poured from a single barrel and sold for the price of a cow per jug, how they bury the dead, entire villages at a time, about the quarantine that doesn't exist because that is an admission that the disease is contagious, and according to canon, the disease is a punishment from the light, and only a sinner can be infected by it. About Valen. He doesn't believe in the light, not one bit. He believes in money. The monopoly on healing brings the order more than taxes bring the king. Valen controls the Eastern District, 400 villages, each pays a tithe. Every sick person pays for a visit from the healer. Every deceased person pays for a funeral service. Birth, wedding, funeral, illness. Every event in life passes through the order's coffers. The appearance of a boy who heals for free and better is not heresy to Wallen. It's competition. May told him about herself. She joined the order at 12, an orphan, beautiful. They took her in as a novice. At 14, Wallen summoned her to his chambers. Ethan didn't ask for details. He saw the rope marks. He saw the broken rib. He understood everything. May ran away at 16. She lived on the streets for 2 years. She stole. She hid. She waited. She didn't know what she was waiting for until she heard the story about the boy from Moonhall who cut a piece out of his stomach, and the boy survived. That's when she understood. She'd been waiting for him, or someone like him. Ethan listened. Then he asked, "What do you know about his weaknesses?" May replied, "Valen fears only one thing, publicity. He can kill in silence. He can burn villages that aren't on the map. But if the event becomes public, if word reaches the capital, if it gets back to the king, Valen will retreat. Because Magister Aurelius is his superior, and Aurelius cannot tolerate a fuss." Ethan thought, publicity. How do you make an event public in a world without the internet, without newspapers, without television? May said something else. Valen didn't come just for Kai. He came to collect the tithe, 1 child from every 10 households. Tomorrow morning, he'll announce the roundup. Ethan froze. Children. He'd forgotten. Amid the surgeries and births, he'd forgotten about the tithe. 1 child from every 10 households. There were 80 households left in Moonhall. That's 8 children. 8 children who would be taken to the monastery. Half of them wouldn't survive the first year. May had said so. He always does this. He comes, he scares people, he takes them away, he leaves. The village is silent. No one complains. Because there's no one left to complain. Ethan sat on the floor and thought. May looked at him. She waited. Then she said, "You have a plan?" Ethan said, "No." May nodded. "Then I'll tell you what I would do." She pulled a rolled-up sheet of parchment from her bosom. She unrolled it. There was a seal on it, a gold one, with the symbol of the light. Ethan looked at it. "What's this?" May replied, "A form, with the order's seal. I stole 3 of them when I ran away. I've used up 2. This is the last one. You can write anything on this form, and it'll be an official document of the order, with the seal, legally binding." Ethan looked at the form, then at May, then back at the form. A plan began to take shape. Not perfect, risky, but the only one. In the morning, Valen stepped out onto the square. The soldiers lined up. The village had gathered, again, on orders. Valen spoke. His voice was soft, kind. He spoke of the light, of duty, of gratitude, of the tithe, of the children who would be fortunate enough to serve the light in the monastery. The women wept quietly. The men looked at the ground. No one argued. It had always been this way. It would always be this way. Valen took out a list. He began to read the names. The first, Aaron, Nora's son. Nora cried out. She pressed the child to her chest. A soldier stepped toward her. Ethan stepped forward. He stood between Nora and the soldier. He raised his hand. In his hand was a parchment, bearing the order's seal. Valen fell silent. He watched. Ethan spoke loudly so the whole village could hear. A decree from the Order of the Healers of Light. The village of Manhwa is exempt from the tithe for the current year due to the epidemic. Signature. Seal. Valen held out his hand. "Give it to me." Ethan didn't move. He said, "This document was delivered to me 3 days ago from the Order's chancery. Perhaps it didn't reach you in time, Bishop. The road is long. Messengers get lost." Wallen looked at him, at the parchment, at the seal he recognized. The Order's genuine seal. He didn't know the form had been stolen. He knew only that before him lay a document bearing the genuine seal, and that there were 100 witnesses standing around them. If he said the document was a forgery, he would be saying that the Order's seal could be forged. That would undermine trust in all of the Order's documents, to all decrees, to all tithes, to all authority. Wallen remained silent. 5 seconds. 10. Then he smiled. That same warm, gentle smile. He said, "Of course, a misunderstanding. The roads are indeed long. The tithe is canceled for this year." He rolled up his list, put it away, turned to the soldiers, said something quietly. They stepped back. Nora fell to her knees and hugged Are so tightly that the boy squealed. Ethan stood with the parchment in his hand. Wallen stepped close to him. He leaned in. He whispered so that only Kai could hear. "Boy, you just played your only trump card. You have nothing left. I'll be back. And next time, I won't bring soldiers. I'll bring the executioner." He straightened up, smiled at the village, mounted his horse. The squad set off down the road toward the west. Dorian rode last. He turned around, looked at Kai. There was a promise in his eyes. They rode away. May stood around the corner of the house, a knife tucked into her belt. She watched Valen ride away, and on her face there was nothing but hatred and patience. Ethan turned toward the village. People were standing there, looking at him, not like before, not like the son of a drunkard, not like a strange little boy, but like the man who had just saved their children. May, +10. Village reputation, +30. Trust points, +150. Total balance, 913. May told them about Valen and the order from the inside. Valen announced the collection of the tithe. Ethan used a stolen form bearing the order's seal to forge a decree freeing the village. Valen retreated but promised to return with an executioner. The children were saved. The trump card was played. 3 days after Valen's departure, the village breathed a sigh of relief. People opened their doors again. The children went out into the streets. The women did laundry and sang. It was as if the sun had returned after a long winter. Ethan didn't celebrate. He was calculating. Valen would return. Not in 47 days. Sooner. Much sooner. And next time, a piece of paper with a seal won't help. Something else is needed. He needs to become visible beyond the village, beyond the county. He needs the people Valen fears to know about him. The king, the nobility, the capital. A letter from Clara Winters arrived in the morning. No, not a letter. A messenger, on horseback, in livery bearing the Winters coat of arms, a golden stag on a blue field. The messenger asked for Dr. K. Ethan stepped out. The messenger looked at him, looked again. Then he pulled out a scroll. Baron Winters requests that Dr. K come to the castle, immediately. The Baron's youngest son. He's ill. Ethan asked, "What's wrong with him?" The messenger said, "He choked at lunch. A bone. He's not breathing. He's turning blue. The healers are praying. It's not helping." Ethan ran. He literally ran, on the short legs of an 8-year-old's body, down the muddy road after the messenger's horse. After 200 paces, Hannah caught up with him. She lifted him under his arms and hoisted him onto her back. She ran faster. Toby led the donkey out from behind the barn, the only one in the village. Ethan and Hannah climbed aboard. The donkey broke into a trot. The messenger was waiting. They set off. Winter's castle stood 2 hours' ride away, on a hill, stone walls, towers, flags, a bridge over the moat. It was the first time Ethan had seen the castle. Kai hadn't either. Villagers never came here. The gates opened immediately. The messenger shouted, and the guards parted. The castle courtyard, a flurry of activity, servants running about, women crying. A man in fine clothes stood by the wall. His face was stony. His eyes were empty. Baron Winters. Next to him was a girl, about 16 years old, blonde hair, a blue dress. Her face was tear-stained, angry. She turned toward Ethan. She looked down at him. Her voice was hoarse from screaming. "It's you." "It's the healer. He's just a child." Ethan didn't answer. He was already running up the stairs. The messenger pointed to a room. The door was open. Inside, on the bed, lay a boy, about 7 years old. His face was blue. His lips were purple. His eyes were rolled back. Next to him stood 2 healers in white robes. One was reciting a prayer. The other was drawing blood from the boy's hand. Ethan stopped for a second. Bloodletting, for suffocation. He shoved the healer aside, roughly. The healer fell to the floor. The other fell silent. Ethan approached the boy. A diagnostic glance. Pulse 52, dropping. Oxygen deprivation. Upper airway obstruction. Foreign object. A bone, deep inside. Not a Heimlich maneuver anymore. There's no time for a Heimlich maneuver. The boy is losing consciousness. 2 more minutes and his brain will start to die. Ethan turned to Hannah. A knife, quickly. Hannah pulled a scalpel from behind her belt. She handed it to him. Ethan turned to the Baron, who was standing in the doorway. He said, "I'm going to cut his throat right now. If I don't, he'll die in 2 minutes. Make up your mind." The Baron turned pale. Clara, the girl standing next to him, screamed, "No!" The Baron opened his mouth, closed it. Then he looked at his son, at his blue face, at his purple lips, and nodded. Ethan didn't wait a second longer. He turned to the boy. He felt for landmarks on the neck, the thyroid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage, a membrane between them, a conicotomy. He'd done this 3 times in his past life, on adults, never on a child. An incision, horizontal, 1.5 centimeters. Blood, a little. The membrane, thin. The knife went through. A hole, small. Ethan turned around. There were quill pens on the table. He grabbed one. Hollow. Reed. He inserted it into the incision. Air flowed in. A whistle. High-pitched. Beautiful. Air. The boy shuddered. His chest rose. His face began to turn pink. His lips turned from purple to red. His eyes opened. Cloudy. Frightened. Alive. Clara fell to her knees beside the bed. She grabbed her brother's hand. The boy looked at her and tried to speak. Only a whistle came from his throat, a straw. But he was breathing. He was breathing. Ethan stood nearby. His hands were covered in blood. They were trembling. His heart was pounding. He turned to the Baron. Baron Winters was looking at him. At the 8-year-old boy in a dirty shirt, his hands covered in his son's blood. The boy who had just slit another boy's throat with a reed pen, and that boy had started breathing. The Baron opened his mouth, closed it. Then he did something he had never done in his life. He bowed. To a peasant boy from a destitute village. Clara looked at Kai. She wasn't screaming anymore. She looked at him the way she had never looked at anyone in her life, as if he were a miracle. Plus 500 trust points. Salvation for the nobility. Multiplier 5. Clara went from -10 to +15. recognition by the local nobility. Total balance, 1,413. That evening, Ethan was sitting in the castle's guest room. For the first time in his life, Kaya was on a clean bed. Hannah was sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall. She had fallen asleep an hour ago. The scalpel lay next to her hand. The door opened. Clara entered, quietly, without knocking. She sat down on the edge of the bed. She was silent. Then she said, "The healers said my mother died while giving birth to me because I was a punishment from the light, that it was my fault. I believed that for 12 years. Ethan looked at her. He said, "How did your mother die?" Clara said, "Hemorrhage. During childbirth. A lot of blood. They prayed. It didn't help." Ethan closed his eyes. Placenta previa, like Pern's wife. Only Pern's wife had him. But Clara's mother had no one. Only the healers with their prayers. He said, "Your mother didn't die because of you. She died because the placenta blocked the way out. It happens by accident. No one is to blame. Not you, not the light. It's anatomy, the body, a coincidence." Clara was silent. Then she began to cry, quietly, soundlessly. Tears streamed down her cheeks and she didn't wipe them away. 12 years. It was the first time anyone had told her it wasn't her fault. Ethan sat beside her, silent. Hannah was sleeping on the floor. Stars shone outside the castle window. Clara cried. 10 minutes later, she stood up. She wiped her face. She looked at Kai. She said, "I'll write to Grandma. She's the Queen's lady-in-waiting. I'll tell her about you, about what you do." Clara left. Ethan lay down. He closed his eyes. Grandmother, the Queen's lady-in-waiting. Direct access to the royal court. The first letter about the doctor from Manhwa will be sent to the capital tomorrow morning. Wallen wanted silence. There would be no silence. Ethan arrived at Winter's castle and saved Clara's younger brother with a conicotomy. The Baron bowed to him. Clara Ra learned the truth about her mother's death and, for the first time in 12 years, stopped blaming herself. She promised to write to her grandmother, the Queen's lady-in-waiting. The first letter about Kai will be sent to the capital. The next 3 weeks changed everything. Ethan returned to Manhwa from the castle with a wagon. On the wagon were sacks of grain, a barrel of salt, fabric, clean, lots of it, and a letter from Baron Winters, unsealed, with a seal. Kai, the healer from Moonhall, is under the protection of the House of Winters. Ethan nailed the letter to the door of the infirmary, an infirmary that didn't exist yet. He began to build. The Bourne house was too small. Morn helped. The blacksmith brought 4 men. In 3 days, they built an addition. Wooden, spacious, 2 rooms, one for examinations, the other for the seriously ill. Benches, tables, shelves for herbs, a separate hearth for boiling. Ethan hung a board above the door. On the board, one word was written in charcoal. Clinic. The first in Moonhall. The first in the Eastern District. The first in the Kingdom of Villain. Yuna arrived on the 4th day after the opening, in the evening, without warning. She stood in the doorway, holding on to the doorframe. Tall, thin, a scar across her left eye, pale. Her right leg wouldn't bear her weight. A bandage on her thigh, dirty, brown with old blood. She said, "The healers told me to have my leg cut off. I'm looking for someone who won't." Ethan examined the wound. A gash. Old. A week old. Infected. Pus. The stench. Necrosis at the edges. But not deep. The bone is intact. The blood vessels are intact. The leg is still alive. Just dirty. Neglected. Ethan said, "I'll save your leg, but it'll hurt." Yuna lay down on the bench, without asking, without haggling. She lay down and closed her eyes. "Go ahead." Ethan worked for 2 hours. He cleaned out the wound, removed the necrotic tissue, rinsed it with moonshine. A drainage tube made of cane, a compress with mold. Siona had been growing it for 3 weeks already. Green mold on rye bread, kept warm and moist. just as Volkov had written. Not penicillin yet, but something close, something it was. It worked. 3 days later, the wound was clean. A week later, Yuna was back on her feet. She walked around the room, carefully at first, then faster. Then she turned to Kay. She said, "Now my leg is yours, and the sword too." She stayed, not as a patient, as a guard. She slept by the clinic door. The sword was nearby. No one entered without her permission. Yuna plus 20, plus 200 trust points. The first penicillin compress. Total balance, 1,613. 100 remained until the full penicillin prescription was filled. Ethan used them that very evening. He unlocked it. Knowledge poured in. Complete, detailed, strain, temperature, medium, extraction, dosage, storage, everything. He sat on the floor of the infirmary and wrote it all down. Not on paper, there was no paper. On the wax tablets that Toby had carved. Ethan wrote down the formula for the first antibiotic in the history of the Kingdom of Valane. Siona sat next to him and copied it onto her own sheet. Neatly, precisely, every number, every name. She didn't ask any questions. She knew what it was. Her mother knew too. Only her mother hadn't made it in time. Ethan would make it in time. For the next 2 weeks, he and Siona grew mold. 10 pots, 20, 30, beneath the infirmary, in the basement that Morn and his assistants way. Warm, damp, dark, perfect conditions. The mold grew, green, bright, alive. The first batch of real penicillin was ready in 12 days, a murky liquid in a clay pot. Ethan stared at it. In his past life, a vial of penicillin cost $3. In this life, a small pot of murky liquid cost 12 days of work by 2 people and the knowledge of 2 time travelers from different eras. He tested it on his first patient a day later, an old man from a neighboring village, a festering infection on his leg. The healers had said to amputate. Ethan gave him penicillin, compresses, injections. No injections, no syringes, oral administration. Bitter. The old man spat it out, but he drank it. After 3 days, the inflammation subsided. After 5, the skin cleared up. After a week, the old man was walking. Munhall's clinic was running at full capacity. People came every day, from the village, from neighboring villages, and from settlements 10 versts away. Word spread quickly. A boy doctor. He cuts but doesn't kill. He gives green sludge and the fever goes away. He doesn't pray. He doesn't take money. He only asks that you wash your hands. The team grew. Hannah assisted with surgeries. Hands that had once forged horseshoes now held clamps. Siona prepared the medicine. The quiet girl who used to stutter now commanded 3 assistants and didn't stumble over the word dosage. May kept records. Documents. Records. Who came, with what they received, how it ended. The first medical records in the history of Valane. Yuna stood at the door and kept out anyone who had no business being there. Lena took pulses, by ear, without a device. She pressed her ear to the patient's chest and spoke. Thump, thump, pause, thump. Third tone. Not good. She was 4.5 years old. A letter from the capital arrived 3 weeks after the visit to Winter's castle. A royal messenger. A horse covered in soap, a gold seal on the scroll, with a crown. Ethan unrolled it. The text was brief. By royal decree, Healer K of Munhall is ordered to appear at court in the capital of Valane, alive and unharmed. Signed, Osmond III. Ethan stared at the scroll. Then he looked up. May was standing nearby. Hannah, Siona, Yuna. Lena was clinging to his shirt. Ethan said, "We're going to the capital." Ethan had opened the Munhall clinic and healed the leg of the mercenary Yuna, who became his bodyguard. He had cultivated the first true penicillin and used it to cure erysipelas. The team was now fully formed. A royal decree had arrived demanding they appear at court. The clinic was up and running, and rumors of it had spread throughout the entire region. The capital of Valena was called Kronheim. Ethan saw it at dawn on the 5th day of their journey. White walls, towers, spires, the golden roofs of the temples of light. A river cut the city in half. Bridges, markets, the harbor. 200,000 people. The largest city in the kingdom, and the dirtiest. Ethan could smell it an hour before they reached the gates. Sewage, rot, disease. The same smell that had hung over Moonhall on the first day, only 1,000 times stronger. They entered through the eastern gate. A cart, a donkey, Ethan, Hannah, Siona, May, Una, Lena. 6 of them. Una was riding on horseback, her sword in plain sight. The rest were in the cart. The guard at the gate looked at the royal scroll. She looked at the boy. They looked at the scroll again. They let them through. On the way to the palace, Ethan looked around. His diagnostic gaze worked non-stop. Every other person on the street was sick. Intestinal infections, skin diseases, tuberculosis, syphilis, and amid all that, something else. Something Ethan recognized immediately. 2 bodies lay on a cart in the alley, covered with rags. Hands were sticking out from under the rags, black, not from dirt, from necrosis, bubonic plague. It was already here. It had spread from the southern ports, silently, unnoticed. While Wallen was collecting the tithe and Dorian was hunting heretics, the plague had entered the capital and begun to kill. Ethan counted the bodies. 2 carts on one street, 3 on the next, 5 in the square. The city didn't know yet. The city was still pretending nothing was happening, but Ethan saw it. He saw the map of the outbreak's spread. He remembered his lecture on the history of epidemiology, the southern ports, the trade routes, the river cities, the capital. 6 months. Without quarantine, without sanitation, without antibiotics, the plague would kill 1/3 of Kronheim in 2 months. The royal palace, white stone, high ceilings, tapestries, gold. Ethan was led through 3 halls. Una wasn't allowed past the first one. She stood against the wall and placed her hand on her sword. She said, "I'll be here." Hannah and Sion were left in the second hall. May pulled up her hood and disappeared into a side corridor. She knew the palace, secret passages, the throne room, huge. The ceiling was lost in the darkness. Torches burned along the walls. A man sat on the throne, not old, not young, about 45, pale, tired, a crown on his head, a simple one, a golden band. Osmond III, King of Valena. Standing next to the throne was a man in a white robe, old, about 70, thin, tall. His face was like dried parchment. His eyes were lively, sharp, intelligent. His hands were calm. Not a single ring on his fingers. Magister Aurelius, the great healer of the kingdom, keeper of the stolen Volkov manuscript. Ethan stopped 10 paces from the throne. Lena stood beside him, holding his hand, not out of fear, out of habit. Ethan looked at Aurelius. Aurelius looked at him. It was the first time they had looked each other in the eye. Aurelius knew. Ethan could see it. The old man looked at the boy and saw what no one else could see. Knowledge. Not childish, not rustic. Knowledge from another world. Aurelius saw this because he'd seen it before. In Volkov's manuscript. In words that no human of this world could have written. The king spoke. His voice was quiet, weary. "I'm told you heal people, boy." Ethan replied, "Yes, your majesty." The king said, "I'm told you cut into them and they live, that you give them green slime and the fever recedes, that you saved Baron Winter's son by sticking a feather down his throat." Ethan replied, "Yes." The king was silent for a moment. Then he said, "People are dying in my city. The healers are praying. People are dying faster than the healers can pray. My grand healer says this is the will of the light." He turned to Aurelius. Aurelius stood motionless, his face stony. The king continued, I don't know whose will this is, but I need someone who can stop death. You can. Ethan said, I can, but I need time, people, supplies, and one condition. The king raised an eyebrow. Ethan said, everything I do will be done openly, for everyone, free of charge, not under the banner of the order, not in the name of the healers of the light, in the name of medicine, just medicine. Silence fell over the hall. Aurelius stirred, barely noticeably. Ethan turned toward him and said, Magister Aurelius, there is a notebook in your library, an old one, written in a language other than Valen. You know what I'm talking about. Aurelius turned pale, for a single second, then his face became stony again. But Ethan saw it, and the king saw it. Ethan continued, the man who wrote that notebook knew what I know. He wanted everyone to know. You hid his knowledge and treated only those who paid in gold. Meanwhile, in the southern ports, people were dying of the plague and no one knew what to do because you'd hidden the answer. The room fell silent. Aurelius stood motionless. Then he said, Boy, you don't understand what kind of game you're playing. Ethan replied, This isn't a game. It's the plague, and it will kill everyone. The rich and the poor, those who pay with gold and those who pay with eggs. If you don't share your knowledge and let me work, you'll die too, because the plague doesn't discriminate. The king stood up. Everyone fell silent. He looked at Aurelius, then at Kay. Then he said, Boy, I'm giving you people, supplies, and time. Do what you must. He turned to Aurelius. And you will give him the notebook. Aurelius opened his mouth. Yours, the king repeated. You will give him the notebook. This is not a request. Aurelius closed his mouth. He bowed. To the king, not to Kaya. He would never bow to Kaya. But he would hand over the notebook, because the king's order is not to be questioned, not even by the great healer. Ethan stood in the throne room. Lena stood beside him. The girl was 5 years old, and she stood before the king without fear. Ethan looked at her. Lena looked at him. Then she said quietly, so that only he could hear, Brother, the king's pulse is fast, 86, and the third tone. Quiet, but I can hear it. Ethan looked at the king. A diagnostic gaze. Pulse 86. Heart failure. Early stage. Probability 61%. Lena heard it with her ear. Without a system, without knowledge. She just heard it. A 4-year-old girl diagnosed the king based on the sound of his heart. Ethan squeezed her hand. He said to himself, You'll be the best doctor in the world. Much better than me. They left the throne room. Hannah and Siona were waiting in the hallway. Hannah said, Well? Ethan said, We're staying. We're working. Hannah nodded. Siona nodded. May appeared from behind a column holding a bundle, a notebook from Aurelius's library. She hadn't waited for the old man to bring it himself. She knew the palace and its secret passages. Ethan took the notebook and opened it. Volkov's handwriting. The same. Familiar. Like home. The Soviet surgeon's final notebook. Missing chapters. Formulas. Diagrams. Descriptions of operations. And on the last page, a single line. To whoever comes after, you've already gone further than I have. Don't stop. Ethan closed the notebook. He looked at his team. Hannah, the hands of a blacksmith, the heart of a warrior. Siona, the eyes of a mother, the knowledge of 2 generations. May, a knife at her belt, truth on her tongue. Yuna was waiting downstairs, a sword and loyalty. Lena, the ears of a doctor, the future of medicine. Ethan said, We need a place, a big one, clean, with water, and with students, lots of students. May said, I know a place like that, an old monastery across the river. It's been empty for 3 years. Ethan nodded. Then let's get started. Tomorrow. They walked down the palace corridor, 6 of them, an 8-year-old boy, 4 girls, a child. Outside the windows, Kronheim was burning with the plague and didn't know it. In a month it would know. In 2 months it would scream. In 3 months it would beg. Ethan would be ready. Because in one hand he held the notebooks of 2 time travelers from different eras. In his other hand, 5 people who would follow him into the fire. In his mind, 1,613 trust points and knowledge this world had never seen before. Valen's Academy. Not yet built, not yet opened, but already alive. In his mind, in Hannah's hands, in the grasses of Siona, in May's notes, in Yuna's sword, in Lena's ears. Ethan walked down the palace corridor and thought of Volkov, of the Soviet surgeon who arrived first, who healed, who taught, built, and who was burned at the stake. Volkov wrote, "Don't repeat my mistakes." Ethan didn't repeat them. Volkov trusted those in white. Ethan didn't trust them. Volkov was alone. Ethan isn't alone. Volkov sought out the nobility too soon. Ethan waited until the nobility came to him on their own. 3 mistakes, 3 lessons, 80 years between them, 2 time travelers, 1 burned, 1 alive, still alive for now. They left the palace, evening. The sun was setting behind the walls of Kronheim. Golden light on the white stone, beautiful. Lena raised her head and looked at the sky. She said, "Brother, it smells like that here too, just like home. When you came." Ethan nodded. "Yeah, it does. But now we're here, and we know what to do about it." Lena nodded, seriously, like a grown-up. Then she took his hand. They walked down the palace steps. Hannah was on the right, Siona on the left, May behind them, Yuna in front. 6 of them on the steps of the royal palace. A boy in a dirty shirt with the hands of a surgeon. A girl with a hammer who forged needles. A quiet herbalist with her dead mother's notebook. A runaway novice with a knife and a thirst for vengeance. A mercenary with a sword and a scar across her eye. And a 4-year-old girl who could hear the king's heartbeat. Before them lay the city. Sick, filthy, dying. Unaware that it was dying. Behind them lay the palace. The king who had ordered them to help. The old man who had given them the notebook. Ahead lay the plague, the academy, war with the order, and a world that did not yet know it had changed forever. Ethan took the first step downward. Lena took a step beside him, hand in hand, brother and sister. A surgeon from another world and a girl with perfect pitch. The first 2 doctors of the Valina Academy, which doesn't exist yet, but which will. He knew it, because he had already saved the world once. One night, with a single spoonful of honey, with a single mug of boiled water. He would do it again. Only the scale would be different. Not a house, not a village, not a county, a kingdom. Ethan walked down the steps and didn't look back. Volkov looked back. Volkov felt regret. Volkov had doubts. Ethan didn't look back. Lena stood before him. And as long as Lena stood beside him, he kept walking forward.